Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto revives the Hokages part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. We open our story on Kanehigakure no Sato, the village hidden in the leaves. A large, normally bustling town, filled with busy people moving about their daily lives with a carefree indifference. Every building, every home has a history within Kanehigakure. This seeping feeling is all because of the nature of Kanehigakure, its past. Its name means hidden in the leaves, and it is a shinobi village. Founded years ago by some extraordinary people, Konoha has since grown to be a strong place, and this is all reflected in its buildings, its homes. Because of its nature, there have been times when Konoha and its people have been attacked, times of war and suffering that fill the hearts and memories of those involved till their dying days. Everywhere you look within Konoha, you see the old and the new together in one magnificent amalgamation. Old wooden building originally built around trees, patched up with metal sheets and hasty brick construction work. Apartment building held together by planks, billboards mounted on precarious posts, like a warren of humanity. Held within the perimeter of a great wall, created by several hundred vertical beams of the strongest, most solid oak. Not beams in the conventional sense, but rather whole tree trunks nailed into the ground, some say by the Shodaime himself. And to the rear of the village, a great mountain peninsula known as the Hokage Mountain, and carved into the foremost rock face is 4 faces. These faces are the faces of the Hokage of the Leaf, the 4 greatest shinobi that Konoha has ever seen since its found, the 4 shinobi who have led the village into prosperity. These natural features, combined with the strength of its shinobi, make Kanehigakure no Sato one of the most well-protected hidden villages in the entire East continent, perhaps rivaled by Sunagakure or Kumogakure in its impregnability. Since its founding, Konoha has grown from strength to strength. It has one of the greatest known hospitals in the eastern continent, a shinobi academy unique to the Hai no Kuni, and a bustling marketplace. But today, as it has been so, there is a slight difference to Konoha. Something is out of the ordinary, and that something is silence. There is no sound whatsoever emanating from anywhere, nobody is going about their daily business, no one living their lives as they would usually. There is a reason for this unnatural silence. A reason that happens to be several hundred feet tall, has 9 tails and is covered in crimson fur. The Kyubi no Kitsune, the great 9-tailed demon fox, has once again descended from its den in the smoke-spine mountains to wreak destruction upon humanity. This particular time, by some cruel twist of fate, the Kyubi has chosen to advance on Konoha. It is said that the Kyubi is the greatest of the Bijou, the most powerful of its brethren. With one swish of just one of its many tails it can topple mountains, or create mighty tsunamis to cover the earth in fire and water. But today it shall not be Konoha that is covered in fire and water, it is not the Hokage mountain that is toppled by the sweep of a tail. For fate had other plans for the village, and to that end it gave the people their savior. A man born and raised amongst them, a genius whose only dream would be to protect them. From the masses of potential shinobi there rose one man from the crucible of the Third Great War. When fire fought earth and air, he rose to protect the people. The Yondaime, the 4th Hokage of Kanehigakure no Sato. Faced against the demonic force of nature from the bowels of hell itself, he is once again going to do his duty and protect the people. Minato-san, it is time to join the others. They cannot hold out much longer against the fox, came the old voice from behind him. Minato Namikaze brushed aside the strands of blonde hair from his eyes and turned to face the group behind him. All of the preparations had been completed not too long beforehand, he had simply been using some stolen minutes to retie his hitaite and dust off his clothes. He was dressed in his usual old jounin attire. Dark blue pants, his custom chunin vest and his old white trench coat. Proudly emblazoned on the back was a fiery swirl, the eternal symbol of the will of fire. Behind him was a small group of individuals, some of the finest shinobi of the current generation. The former Hokage, Minato's predecessor Sarutobi Mizaru. He was dressed in his old battle attire, a black full-body suit with a plate armguard and a samurai-style helmet, an heirloom of the Sarutobi clan from their samurai roots centuries before. Beside the venerable shinobi, the remaining 2 of his former students, Tsunade and Jiraiya of the Densetsu no Sannin. Both of them only 39, on the verge of middle age. Jiraiya the Gamasanin, the tallest of the whole group. His most distinguishing features being the mane of white hair down his back and the 2 red lines down his cheeks. Cheeks that bore solemn, nigh on emotionless expressions. Like her counterpart, Tsunade stood out from the others but in her own unique way. The blonde hair tied at the back in twin ponytails, and the 2 large hemispheres to her front, not that anyone else notices. The medical ninja lifted a sleeve to wipe away the small trails of tears. And with the old team Sarutobi, the remains of Team Minato stood. Minato's own 2 pupils completed the circle of trust. They were the only people who the Yondaime trusted enough with the truth. Hotai Rin and Hataki Kakashi, Two young teenagers of just 15 who had already witnessed more war and death than most other normal people could ever possibly fathom. Both of them were looking towards their sensei, both with pleading looks on their faces. "Sensei, please," Kakashi asked in earnest. "There must be some other way. There must be another way to stop the Kyuubi, some other jutsu but this one." The silver-haired jounin looked his sensei with his one visible eye, a new hitayate covering the other. One eye visible, but showing all of the emotion of two. "Hi, I agree with Kakashi-san. There has to be something other than what you have planned." "Something we haven't thought of," exclaimed Rin, her trademark plasters adorning her teenage cheeks. "No. Kakashi, Rin, everyone. You all know there is no other way. Every moment we waste means more lives are lost keeping the Kyuubi from reaching the village, and as Hokage that is something I cannot allow to occur. Not after the numbers we lost during the last Great War, this village cannot afford it. The Kyuubi has withstood every jutsu we have used, we are grasping our last straw." Minato replied, his voice no more than a whisper, but laden with authority. "But you don't know if your jutsu will work, you haven't even tested it yet. This isn't like the Rasengan or Hiraishin, this is a suicide jutsu. I know in these circumstances it is difficult to look elsewhere, but there are still other options. Tsunadeheim and me could launch a summoned assault, draw the beast away that way." The white-haired Toad Sennin spoke with a silent wisdom that only showed itself in times of crisis. Most of the time he was considered to be a half-mad pervert. Amazingly, everyone else nodded, agreeing the new idea. "Jiraiya-sensei, you know I have..." Minato started to argue but was interrupted by the sound of crying in his arms. All the noise had woken the precious cargo cradled by his arms. He looked down at the bundle of white cloth and smiled at the baby within. Blue eyes looked into his own as Minato gazed at his son's face. He silenced the baby by tickling his belly, producing a giggle from the infant, who then closed its eyes and went back to sleep, happy that everything was all right. Minato's face grew stern as he finished comforting his child, and he gazed into the eyes of all those present. "This must be done," he said in a voice that brooked no argument. With those words, he reached into one of the inner pockets of his trench coat and produced 2 scrolls. Handing them to Sarutobi with a nod, he continued saying, "These are my last will and testament, my final instructions. You may read the one with the red seal, for it contains all of the plans I had for the village, but the blue seal is to be kept until the day my son asks you for it. It is for his eyes only. Understand?" The old man sighed deeply, allowing himself to momentarily feel his age. "Hi, Minato-san, as you request I shall do it to the best of my abilities," he replied with a nod. The yondaime moved from one person to another, bending in close to give them each a personal farewell. He received strong hugs from Tsunade, Rin and Kakashi, and solemn smiles from Sarutobi and Jiraiya. When he was finished, he tied the bundle and his arms tight to his chest with 2 lengths of strong fabric looped under and around his arms. Once he felt the child was secure, he bent his legs slightly and with a great leap shot out of the window. Biting his thumb hard, he moved his hands through several well-known seals. With a great shout he cried out Kuchio's no Jutsu, and in an instant he found himself standing upon the back of a giant red and black toad. The ninja smoke quickly cleared, only to be replaced by more smoke from a massive ochre pipe. "You ready?" Minato spoke the toad in a booming gruff voice. "Hi, let's go," Gamabunta-sama sighed Minato, as he took one last look at the face of his only child. "Forgive me, son." With those words said, Gamabunta slowly made his way through the streets of Konoha, careful not to damage any buildings on his way. When he got to the edge of the village, the great toad coiled his legs and shot into the sky. Elsewhere. There are few things that can inspire true fear in the hearts of men. Most think they have felt it once in their lives, but they have barely scratched at the surface. And what Kushino was currently staring at was the very essence of that gut-wrenching, body-numbing fear. A 300-foot-tall crimson fox, its 9 long tails swishing through the air wildly. The noises they made were like small sonic booms, only just taking the edge of the mad growling coming from the inhuman beast's throat. But what really cut into her, what really made her want to collapse into the fetal position and cry was the killing intent. The sheer malice radiating from the eyes of the kitsune, laced with a monstrous chakra that made her blood run cold. Then she thought of her home, and the small son she was fighting for. "Hold the line! Teams 8 through 12, give me some cover fire over here! Push it back!" She shouted her orders left and right, trying to keep the disheveled army of shinobi going. They were dying by the minute, be it of chakra exhaustion, stray jutsu or a giant paw crushing their bones, it didn't matter, they died anyway. Uzumaki-san, a stout jounin, called over to her. She recognized him to be of the Akimichi clan, the red sheet tattoos and equally red hair giving it away. "We need the yondaime to speed his approach, we're losing ground." "I know, Chusa, we just have to keep pushing," she replied, leaping into the air as a great tail swept by. She pushed as much chakra into her leg muscles to get the most boost, but try as she might, she and the stout shinobi got caught in the rushing wind caused by the tail's movement. They were flung into the air like rag dolls into a nearby copse of oak trees. Chusa was large enough to smash through the tree's limbs and hit the ground below, but Kushina hit the trunk with full devastating force. There was a terrific crunching sound, and the flash of pain from her chest and right leg told her she had broken a couple of ribs and her femur bone. Reacting quickly, she ran through some hand signs and activated a medical jutsu Tsunade had taught her to deal with any possible external or internal bleeding. It was rushed and she found it difficult to breathe properly, but she managed to stave off the worst of the wounds. Gritting her teeth against the pain, Kushina found herself moving, albeit awkwardly. "God damn it, Minato, where are you?" she thought to herself, her mind racing with the fatigue and adrenaline. Then she felt a tingle down her back, and a huge shadow passed over her head. With a thunderous crash, the great shape of Gamabunta landed in the forest, crushing trees beneath his warty bulk. In a second he was leaping again, this time to gain ground to shoot great spheres of water at the kitsune. "Sway Tun! Teppadama!" he cried out, firing 7 of the projectiles at the fox. The Kyuubi turned to face the attack, and took a deep inhaling breath. With a roar it blew out an intense gale of air and pure chakra. The watery cannonballs were disintegrated into a light spray of water on contact, which rained down upon the battlefield. But the fox's attention had been pulled away from the frantic shinobi beneath its feet, and with bestial hatred it gazed at the newcomer. It was another upstart human standing atop a giant toad. Snarling, the fox dug in its haunches and moved to attack. Gamabunta recognized the impeding assault, and drew his massive tanto from its scabbard. "I'll only be able to hold it off for so long, Minato, so hurry with those preparations." "You've got 3 minutes, kid," he said gruffly, fixing his beady eyes on the marauding beast. In a flash the Kyuubi was upon him, and the deadly dance began. Minato heard his friend and ally, but was too busy to reply. Taking a large scroll from the pouch resting on his right cheek, he quickly rolled it out onto the warty moist skin of the toad beneath him. On the inside of the scroll was a complex series of lines and signs designed to form one half of the jutsu Minato intended to use, with an empty space in the center. With the written seal added to the Fuin jutsu, the focus of the soul imprisonment would be diverted into the stomach of his young son and not his own. Minato took a small moment to apply a chakra-based magnetic effect to keep the scroll from falling off Gamabunta, who was already moving at great speed in his armed combat with the Kyuubi. "Now or never, I pray this works," Minato thought as he carefully placed his child within the scroll's circle. With a look of determination he began to run through the seals of the Shiki Fujin. Meanwhile, from her vantage point further away from the action, Kushina watched with several other shinobi as the yondaime began his battle with the kitsune. Lying against a tree supported, in a reversal of roles, by a Kimichi Chusa, the kunoichi could only barely follow the last movements of her husband. "I hope whatever plan you've come up with works, Minato. Protect Konoha, protect our son," she thought, wiping a bead of blood from her chin. Gamabunta scowled at his opponent as he fended off swipe after swipe with his blade, whilst dodging whip-like attacks from the 9 coiling tails. "Gotta pin him down so Minato can pull out his soul," he thought, and in a flash of toad brilliance came up with an idea. He waited for the fox to launch another right hook, and with a quick flick he shot out his long pierced tongue to ensnare the furry limb. Fighting the urge to gag on the bloody fur, he moved with his tanto and with all his amphibian might drove the blade straight down through the paw and into the ground below. There was a crash as the attack rocked the forest, and the fell beast roared for the first time that night in pain and not anger. Capitalizing on the brief advantage, Gamabunta wrapped both limbs around the weapon's grip and lent with all of his weight to keep the impaled limb and by extension the Kyuubi pinned. He did not escape from this maneuver without injury, as the angry kitsune lashed out with its free paw and scored a great bloody slash down the left side of the toad's face. "Damn, that'll leave a scar," he grumbled, before shouting out, "Now, kid! Do it now!" Having a few seconds ago completed the series of signs, Minato took the hint and prepared to seal the fates of 3 souls in a single final blow. He looked behind and saw the grim image of the Shinigami he had summoned, and for a moment he felt a strange sense of amazement as the being lifted its left arm up. As the beads rolled into place and the strange markings appeared on the limb, the god of death pushed its arm into the ephemeral faceless image of Minato suspended before it. The yondaime felt a strange feeling in his abdomen and knew it was his time to act. Calling forth the power of the Shinigami with every fiber of his being, Minato pushed from within. A ghostly blue arm of pure spiritual energy shot out from his stomach like a blazing firework, extending far beyond any natural length to reach its target. The struggling fox could only stare in surprise as the limb shot forwards, beyond the mortal barriers of flesh and bone to grab its very soul. Crying out with the effort, Minato mentally began to pull with his willpower, using the death god's strength and the fox's surprise to their full benefit. The Kyuubi tried to struggle, but for all its might and raw power it found itself, for once in its long existence, to be wanting. It could only howl to the heavens as its foul-tainted soul was pulled from its form. As the last of the soul left its fleshy case, the crimson body of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the harbinger of nature's demonic fury, toppled over with an almighty crash into the wasted forest around it. The surrounding shinobi gave a great cheer. Their leader had vanquished the monster. But they were only half right. As the Shinigami removed the dagger from its hungry, drooling mouth in preparation to sever the souls of the Kyuubi and its summoner, it paused. Something new was occurring. It had been summoned in different ways before my mortals, and always the price was their souls for its service, but this one was doing something different. Minato was moving as hastily as he could, forming a new set of seals as his body began to go numb. He struck his right hand down onto the seals of the scroll and cried out Fuin. The ink glowed a shining blue, and the captured soul of the Kyuubi began to move in a new direction. Like water being drawn down a plug hole, the soul spiraled around and around down into its new target, the navel of the infant lying in the scroll's center. The child cried in distress and the air around it hummed with power, and the Kyuubi's soul entered his tiny body via the belly button. The soul swirled until all of it was drawn into the navel, and with a strange popping sound the jutsu ended and the beast was sealed. Minato sighed as his calculations proved correct, and a Shusho Fuin with complementary hack no Fuin Shiki formed on the stomach of his son. The Shinigami scowled and ground its teeth in annoyance. The mortal had altered the technique at the last moment to divert the stolen soul into the newborn, and since the infant did not perform the summoning, he could not claim its soul for sustenance. Nor could he now claim the summoning mortal's soul either, since their contract stipulated 2 souls, those of the summoner and the target. Well, technically it could devour the upstart, but its immortal mind was already remembering its other commitments, and so the death god decided to depart. The ephemeral effigy of Minato drifted away as the Shinigami departed, and rejoined with its host's body. Minato felt life return to his limbs as the deathly numbness washed away, only to replace by a different sense of fatigue. Since the technique was a final resort, it used a tremendous amount of physical and spiritual energy, and so Minato could barely move his body at all. He only had the strength to pick up his son and hold him tight to his chest before falling backwards onto Gamabunta's back. The great toad boss was faring almost as badly, with the final attack of the fox causing him greater pain than he believed it would. Unable to help himself, he felt the links binding him to Minato's plane of existence unravel, and before he could warn the man he disappeared in a mighty poof of smoke. Minato felt the sudden lack of substance beneath his body, and recognized instantly the feeling of free fall as he hurtled downwards towards the ground hundreds of meters below him. He put all of his failing energy into holding his son tight and keeping the child protected. Guess I'm gonna die anyway, damn, he thought tiredly, and with a smile he closed his eyes and waited for the impact. Then everything went black. Some time later. Silence. There was nothing but silence as Kakashi moved through the trees, hurriedly making his way through the undergrowth in the direction of the Kyuubi's corpse. He had to find his sensei. He had to make sure the man was alive. He eventually emerged in a large clearing of flattened trees and scorched earth, and his one uncovered eye was drawn immediately to a single spot. In the center of the clearing, in the middle of a large crater, lay the body of the Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure, his sensei and his friend. "Over here!" he yelled, throwing kunai with several explosive tags tied to it into the air as a makeshift flare. Not waiting for the telltale sounds of his comrades, he quickly advanced into the central crater. He collapsed onto his knees at the sight before him. The Yondaime had indeed defeated the Kyuubi, sealing it away never to return within the body of the infant within his arms. The said infant was currently bawling loudly, unsure and upset by what was going on around it. Minato still held the child firmly with the rigid grip that only death could give him. His face was paler than the spiky blonde hair atop his head. Kakashi held back the tears that threatened to spill from his eyes, and felt a hand upon his shoulder. Behind him was Sarutobi, the newly rechristened Sandaime Hokage of Konoha. Behind him were the fully gathered shinobi of Konoha, the survivors of the Kyuubi's attack. Everyone had pained, sad expressions on their faces. Many had begun to weep silent tears as they gathered around their fallen leader. The most notable was Kushina, still supported by Chūsa. She wept openly at the sight of her beloved's seemingly lifeless body. Walking past Kakashi, who had moved to comfort the weeping Rin, Sarutobi bent down to pick up the baby from its father's arms. "So you sealed the beast only to die shielding your child from the fall. Fate truly marked you as a noble man," Minato-san, the old shinobi, thought. He began to turn when he felt a strong grip of his ankle. The fourth had jerked awake suddenly, and with the last of his fading strength was holding the Sandaime still. He began to mumble some words from his cold, dry lips, and Sarutobi bent down again to hear them better. "His name is Uzumaki Naruto," he spoke with labored breath, gazing into middle distance. "I have sealed the Kyuubi inside of him so that one day the greatest threat to the leaf can become the power of its greatest hero. Maintain his anonymity, protect his identity from everyone who does not know of his existence. Do not hate Naruto, do not treat him badly. He is only a vessel for the Kyuubi. He is still human, still just an innocent boy. The fourth then tilted his head to look at his bawling son, and in the faintest of whispers, his eyes framed by tears, spoke softly, "In you, my son, I have placed everything I know. Grow up strong, protect the village as I have done. Take up my legacy and become a great leader. I love you, my." And with that, Namikaze Minato, the greatest leader Konoha had seen since the Shodaime founded it with his brother, the Nidaime, died. One shinobi looked at the bundle and asked Hokage-sama, "Who is that child?" Sarutobi looked at Kushina, who weakly nodded in agreement to what he was about to say. The Sandaime also looked at Kakashi, Rin, Jiraiya and Tsunade, the other four individuals who knew of Naruto's heritage, and he received similar motions. He is an orphan baby, chosen by the Yondaime to serve as the prison of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. His name is Naruto. Give him my clan name, Sarutobi-san uttered Kushina as loudly as she could let him bear the name Uzumaki. Let this boy carry it, since my own newborn son died before the attack. Sarutobi hummed as he caught on to the woman's cunning ruse, and nodded to continue the charade for the other shinobi present. Let all who bear witness to this event remember this child's name. Uzumaki Naruto, bearer of the Kyuubi's curse and hero of Konohagakure no Sato, he said with commanding resolve, his old nuances from his previous tenure returning effortlessly. One by one the shinobi survivors peeled off, leaving those closest to the fourth alone with the body. Sighing, Sarutobi turned his attention to the infant in his arms. The baby stopped its crying and gazed quizzically at the old man's face, before reaching up and tugging on his beard. Smiling at the antics of the baby, Sarutobi turned back to gaze at the body of his friend. It shall be as you ask, Minato-san. The next day, Konoha would awake to find their beloved leader dead, and the only one they would have to blame would be a young infant not 3 weeks old. The child's mother, Kushina, died a day later from internal bleeding and organ damage as a result of her injuries. She was mourned by many, who took solace in the fact that she was joining her beloved in the afterlife. Tsunade left with her apprentice Shizen not long after, the events bringing up bitter memories for her. It was the same for Jiraiya, who needed to get away from the village for a while to deal with the death of his pupil. Only Kakashi, Rin and Sarutobi remained to watch the infant, who to maintain the illusion was placed into the care of the village orphanage. The spiteful villagers would never see the boy as the hero his father intended, only as the demon that took the lives of their loved ones, their friends. And so the story of Uzumaki Naruto began, for better or for worse. Konohagakure no Sato, the village hidden in the leaves. A large peaceful place hidden within a vast forest in Hai no Kuni, backed by a large mountain that overlooks it, and surrounded by an impenetrable wall of wood and stone. Like most shinobi villages over the years, Konoha has evolved its own unique aesthetic style. Its buildings are an eclectic mix of traditional Eastern manners housing clans and wealthy families, and contemporary apartments and building for the poorer population. It appears as a jumbled mess of oddly designed architecture built quiet literally into mighty trees around them. Pipes burst from the walls like metal serpents supplying water among other things to the more modern places, where metal and stone fuse together into a patchwork style. Through Konoha there are rivers, small but varied in size, that meander through the streets, and on the outskirts where inhabited dwellings are thin, many large training grounds exist for the village's military forces to train. I say military because Konohagakure no Sato is a military outpost, a shinobi village supplying elite warriors to the daimyo and all of the feudal lords of Hai no Kuni for protection, military support, and other services. What's more, Konohagakure is ranked as one of the 5 great ninja villages. Its shinobi forces are feared by all but its allies for their skill. It is one of the villages that has an officially recognized kage, unlike some other the smaller villages that claim to have a leader bearing such a title. A kage is a mighty fighter who stands equal with the rulers of the country where their village is based. They oversee the actions of the village and are the leaders of their respective shinobi society. In Konohagakure, these noble people have the honor of having their faces carved into the sacred mountain overlooking the village, as a silent memorial to their very existence. At the time when our story begins, there are 4 faces carved into the mountain, those of the Shodaime, the Nidaime, the Sandaime, and finally the Yondaime. When the village was under the protection and security of the Yondaime Hokage one Namikaze Minato, tragedy struck. Konoha was attacked by the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the 9-tailed demon fox of myth that comes and goes like a natural disaster. The brave shinobi of Konoha fought and died to stall the Biju's approach of the village, buying their leader precious time to prepare one of his many ninjutsu masterpieces. In a bold move, the Yondaime sacrificed himself to seal away the beast within the body of an infant, saving the village and the world from an evil ages-old menace. He left the retired Sandaime, Sarutobi Mizaru, to take care of the village and restore it to peace. And he did. Through experience and wisdom he rebuilt Konohagakure into an edifice of strength the Yondaime and his predecessors would have been proud of, surpassing the effects of his previous influence during his previous tenure as Hokage. The man in question was currently sat in his office, thinking to himself, as he smoked his old pipe. He had just finished negotiations with the daimyo of the Land of Fire for a slight increase in funding for the Ninja Academy, who had been getting more and more students as of late. This got him thinking to the students currently attending, those in the graduating classes who would soon be fully fledged shinobi in the next few weeks. A particularly interesting punch, with many promising young members of Konoha's shinobi clans amongst them. The elite Hyuga, the stoic Aburame, the wild Inuzuka, 3 names among several that had sent their latest generation for training as their parents had been sent, and each of these youngsters was poised to begin their own epic journeys through life. This in turn brought his mind to one person in particular, a very special young boy with blonde hair and bright aquamarine eyes, and a very tragic incident 12 years ago. Swiveling in his seat from looking at the window to the office interior, Sarutobi swept his view over the assembled portraits of his forebears and senseis, the first 2 Hokages. They had taught him many important lessons, and he was glad to have known them as well as he did. His gaze lingered momentarily on his own younger-looking image, causing a chuckle to emerge from his now-aged exterior. He eventually settled on the picture of his short-lived successor and good friend the Yondaime Hokage. Sarutobi's brows knitted in thought as he took a deep breath of tobacco, blowing the smoke from his mouth in a slow exhale. Minato-san, I have tried to fulfill your wishes. The village has been restored and the plans you originally drew up are starting to come into motion. But there are some things even your will cannot accomplish. You wanted him to be seen as a hero, but instead they see only the monster he contains. Sarutobi turned back to face the window, gazing out into the village. I wonder how he is doing, he muttered, his eyes inexorably being drawn to the Hokage mountain. By the looks of it, just fine, he thought with a chuckle. Now if only I can finish that scroll painting. Elsewhere, Naruto was having the time of his life. After 2 months of scrimping and saving his money, his latest prank had finally reached fruition. Now all eyes were on him, they were recognizing his existence. Of course it was recognition followed by disdain, and some really foul language, but still they were noticing his accomplishments, sort of. These were the moments that Naruto had come to live for since he began his hobby of pranks. The thrill that came from a good prank, having people look at him with annoyance, and he hoped admiration, other than pure hatred. They would shout at him words no child should really have to hear, and he would simply shout back, "You're just jealous because you guys don't have the guts to stir things up." This was his latest and greatest prank yet, painting graffiti on the faces of the Hokage. Vivid spirals and lines adorned the stone visages of the village's greatest. Some were made to look they were crying or had nosebleeds, and he loved it. It was perfectly harmless. The paint easily came off when scrubbed with cold water, and he made sure of that. Permanent pranks meant permanent punishments, a small motto he had created to hold himself back from genuine anarchy. Just a finishing touch on the 4th nosebleed and he would be done. Then his danger radar went into overdrive and he heard an ominous booming voice. Naruto! Get down here and back to class. Crap, it's Iruka-sensei, now I'm really gonna get it. Ah well, it was fun while it lasted, he thought to himself, hanging his head in defeat. Ninja Academy. Iruka Umino was a young man in his early 20s. He had tan skin, brown hair and a large horizontal scar running across his face over his nose. A shinobi of the Chunin rank, he was a qualified instructor at the renowned Konoha Shinobi Academy, and a man feared by the student population for his hard disciplinary tactics. A prime example of such harsh discipline would be the young boy in front of him, swearing and shouting and struggling in vain. Naruto was his most prominent truant, always escaping from the classroom to perform Kami knows what trickery. But luckily the crafty youth was tied up tight with strong rope in a special knot reserved only for him, since he had previously displayed an uncanny knack for escape. Honestly, if the kid could only put as much energy into his studies as he did his pranks, he'd be a great genius. Oh well, time to engage discipline mode. I hate to punish these kids like this, but it's the only way they can learn from their mistakes, Iruka thought to himself, hoisting the struggling Naruto by the scruff of his neck before throwing him to his seat. The boy landed face down on his desk in a highly comic fashion, earning roars of laughter from his classmates. Silence! Iruka shouted with his patented authoritative voice number 5, causing instant silence to descend like a calming blanket. Okay class, because a certain someone missed today's lesson, you shall now review the Henji no Jutsu. There was a small uproar of moans and complaints, but they were silenced by a quick and loud cough. I'll call out your name in no particular order, and one by one you shall come down and transform into an exact image of me. Okay, first up is Haruno Sakura. A young pink-haired girl walked to the front of the class. Her hair is long, past her shoulders and tied up with a red ribbon. She pauses briefly to look and blush at a stoic raven-haired boy sitting by the nearby window. With slow, deliberate steps she moved towards the front of the class, trying to appear as ladylike and appealing as she could, like she was walking a catwalk and not a flight of steps. When she got to the front of the class, her attention once again focused on a very specific spot. She quickly shouted, "Watch this, Sasuke-kun," in the boy's general direction, before putting her hands into a seal and calling out Henge no Jutsu with a studious determination. There is a poof of smoke, and in her place is a perfect copy of Irika. Another poof of smoke and a jumping Sakura is seen. Did you see Sasuke? Did you? She cried before running back to her seat. The boy just looks aside, oozing arrogance so thick it was palpable. Uchiha Sasuke sounded Irika's voice. The boy in question stood up and slowly walked to the front of the class, his body language screaming, "This isn't worth my time." With little or no effort whatsoever, he lazily put his hands together in the standard seal and drawled Henge no Jutsu, and a poof of smoke later revealed another perfect Irika copy. The second poof of smoke showed the boy with his hands in his pockets, clearly not bothered at all by the task. And so the names were called out one by one, each student coming to the front of the class and performing a perfect transformation. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto, who by now had managed to cut himself free with a concealed kunai knife, huffed in irritation and walked to the front of the class. A smile flicked across his face as an idea formed in his head. This'll pay Iruka-sensei back for tying me up, he thought, and with gritted teeth he gathered his chakra and formed the seal. Like the others, there is a poof of smoke and sound slightly exaggerated for dramatic effect, but unlike the others, his transformation revealed a buxom naked blonde girl blowing a kiss in a revealing position. Iruka's eyes bugged and he shot back as his nostrils fired out a large fountain of blood, flying in a comical fashion in the direction of his desk. Naruto laughed as he released the jutsu. Ha 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 ha, I call that one my Oiroke no Jutsu. Pretty cool, huh? This led to Iruka shouting at him for making a stupid technique with his nose plugged with tissue, and Naruto yelling back. Needless to say, the foxy youth was subsequently tied up once again and chained down to an iron ring in the corner labeled for Naruto. Later that day, Naruto scrubbed at the rocky surface of the Yandame's face, muttering curses at his sensei under his breath with every movement of his arm. Iruka was making him scrub off every last drop of paint that he had daubed on the faces of the Hokages, and in his mind Naruto thanked his foresight to use water-based paint. We're not leaving until it's all gone, Naruto, shouted Iruka from his perch above. Like I care, Naruto shouted back, it's not like I have anyone waiting for me at home, you know. Iruka paused and looked down at the child, a myriad of emotions playing over his face. Sadness, guilt, loneliness, and regret, all those negative emotions were present on his visage. There was no room this time for happier ones. Naruto, he began, the words coming out slow and unsure. Once you've finished, I was wondering if you would like some ramen, my treat. Naruto looked up at his sensei, a look of pure joy spreading over his face like wildfire. Hell yeah! Now that's some real motivation, he yelled with joy, and with newfound energy began to scrub like crazy, working flat out to clear up quickly. If there was anything that could move Naruto quicker than ramen, it was yet to be discovered. Later, at the Ichiraku ramen stand. Naruto, why did you paint graffiti on the faces of the Hokage? Don't you know who they are? Asked Iruka after finishing his mouthful of ramen. Naruto looked up at him, slurping up a large quantity of noodles into his mouth and finishing them with a large gulp. Yeah, sure I do. The Hokage were the most powerful and most respected ninja in the village, charged with the protection of all who inhabit its walls. If you know that, then why don't you treat them with respect like everyone else? Because I'm going to surpass them all. This exclamation immediately grabbed Iruka's attention, leaving a noodle hanging comically from his lips as he stopped eating to listen. Naruto continued, someday I'm gonna be Hokage, the greatest Hokage this village has ever seen. Then everyone will stop disrespecting me and acknowledge my existence. That is my dream. Iruka looked at his student with a puzzled face, and then smiled knowingly. No matter how many times he heard Naruto say it, it still amazed him. No shinobi has ever used the statement so often and so boldly. Most just muttered it quietly to their friends in an attempt to gain prestige. Oh, Iruka-sensei, I was wondering. Naruto bowed his head and clapped his hands together. Could I borrow your leaf headband, just to try it on, please, pretty please? Oh, this thing. Iruka brought his hand to his headband. Sorry, but only academy graduates are allowed to wear one. Those are the rules. Naruto looked down in disappointment. Fine, he paused. Sensei, can I have another bowl? He said with his usual grin, showing his teacher his empty bowl as evidence. Both of them laughed, and for the first time in a while Naruto felt truly happy. Next day. Okay class, today you will be tested on your ninjutsu to see as you can graduate from the academy, lectured Iruka as he stood in front of the class with his clipboard. This year's test will be on Bunshin no Jutsu. You will come into the side room here one by one and perform the just before Mizuki-sensei. He pointed to a young man with long white hair and a cheerful face and myself. You will then be graded, and if you warrant a pass will be given a leaf headband. Naruto winced and cursed under his breath. Bunshin no Jutsu, crap, that's my worst technique. He watched as one by one his fellow students filed into the adjoining room, and one by one left grinning broadly with a shiny new leaf headband. Finally, when it was his turn, he slowly walked into the room, every step adding to his nervousness. He took a deep cleansing breath and entered. Inside the room at the opposite end to him sat Irika and Mizuki. "Alright Naruto, in your own time, create 3 bunshin for us," said Irika, looking up from his clipboard. "Okay, I gotta do this," Naruto thought. He gathered his chakra, made the seals and cried bunshin no jutsu. Poof, smoke surrounded him, and it slowly cleared to reveal him and his one clone. It looked terrible, lying on the floor, its tongue sticking out, no color whatsoever in its face. "You fail," the words blasted at him like an explosion. "But Irika-sensei, maybe we should cut him some slack. It is his 3rd attempt, and he did create 1 clone," reasoned the white-haired Chunin. "No, Mizuki-sensei. All of Naruto's classmates created at least 3 clones. Naruto made 1, and a pretty pathetic one at that. It doesn't even warrant a passing grade." Naruto gritted his teeth and left the room. After it all finished, he sat on a swing outside, watching the other kids get congratulated by their proud parents. "Good job, I'm so proud of you, you're getting your favorite meal tonight," the words of praise echoed hauntingly across to the sad blonde child. 2 women turned and looked at him, disgust evident on their faces. "Look over there, isn't that the—" "Yeah, he's the only one who didn't pass. Imagine if something like him became a ninja." "SSSSHHHH, we're not supposed to talk about that, you know the rules." Later. Naruto walked slowly in the direction of Ichiraku Ramen. He needed cheering up, and old man Tucci had just the right type of ramen for curing the blues. He heard footsteps behind him, and turning to see who was following him saw the face of his teacher. "Mizuki-sensei?" "Naruto, come with me, I want to talk to you about something." Naruto followed the man, wondering what it might be that he wants to talk about. He's never wanted to talk to me before ever, he thought. The pair eventually settled on a rooftop of a house in a fairly nondescript area of the village's Upper West District. "Don't feel bad for what Irika said," reassured Mizuki, "he's actually looking out for you." This piqued Naruto's interest. He had always thought of Irika as being an overly strict wise ass who couldn't take a joke. Mizuki continued, "He wants you to experience true strength, and in order for that to happen there can be no easy rides. That's why he always fails you, even if what you have done wrong is small. He wants you to persevere and become a great ninja." Naruto paused over this, and digesting this new information and allowing his usually unresponsive mind to process it all. If that's true, he could at least be a little nicer. Now I'll have to wait until the next graduation exam, and by then everyone else will be way ahead of me, even that idiot Sasuke. Mizuki's face split into a dark grin, but he schooled it into a more neutral expression. "You know, Naruto, if you really want to become a genin, there is another way." Naruto's face lit up with hope. "Seriously, I'll do anything, Mizuki-sensei, whatever it takes." Inside, Mizuki was laughing maniacally. This is all too easy, now to seal it, he thought. "Okay, Naruto, here's what you do," and began telling him what to do. Later. Naruto sat alone in the forest clearing by the old cabin used by travelers as a point of rest, the forbidden scroll on his lap. It was late at night, the full moon hung in the air. It had taken all of his hard-earned stealth and skill, but he had gotten the damned scroll from the Hokage's house. I mean, first there were the Anbu guards, then the chakra strings attached to traps, and then the old man himself had caught him in the act. But a quick oiroke no jutsu and the old fart was lying in a pool of his own nasally ejected blood, completely unconscious. The scroll had been in the vault exactly where Mizuki-sensei said it would be, disguised as a walking stick with a genjutsu. Then he had left the house with the careful movements that he had entered it with, and ran for the woods 1 mile south of the village where the cabin was, just like Mizuki-sensei had said. It was starting to creep him out just how much Mizuki-sensei knew about the Sandame's home and the forest, but for the meantime he let the worry leave his mind. He was just too excited to care. "Now, let's see what's so special about this scroll," he muttered as he undid the ties holding the scroll and partially unrolled it. As he scanned the scroll's contents, his heart rate steadily grew faster and faster. Every jutsu on the scroll were super powerful ultra cool ones. The names alone forced him to reread them just to be sure he saw right. Wow, with these jutsu I'll be able to beat Sasuke for sure, and Irika-sensei will have to pass me. But everyone's gonna be looking for me with Irika-sensei, which means I only have time to learn one before he shows up to grade me on the test. Which one? They're all so cool if a little bit dangerous. Copy them for later, whispered an ethereal voice. It was like a wisp of smoke or a gust of wind, sharp and clear but fleeting. Naruto's head shot up, and he looked frantically left and right, searching the surrounding trees for the source of the voice. Write them down. Copy them for later, you can learn them, then whispered the voice again. Naruto was seriously freaked out by this occurrence, but not being one to turn down some good advice, even if they are from a creepy smoke-wind voice that he cannot see yet hear clearly. Taking out a pen and a spare blank scroll, the basic tools of a genius prankster, because you never know when inspiration may strike, he unrolled the scroll further and began to copy down the name, synopsis, and steps towards learning the techniques. On closer inspection, he noticed that there was more to the scroll than just cool ninjutsu that could kill an enemy at 30 paces. There were instructions on the finer points of genjutsu, detailing how the illusions can be made more realistic and thus more effective. There were a selection of taijutsu styles and physical technique deemed too extreme to be taught traditionally. Each style featured its history and teachings, with the basic kata and instructions on how to safely perform them. There were also a series of maneuvers that the scroll deemed to be highly useful in hand-to-hand combat, such as unbreakable joint locks and holds. Their scroll even contained a series of body-breaking training regimes that, from what he read, could turn the weakest genin into a jounin wannabe easy as you can say number 1 ninja. Naruto read through roughly 90% of the scroll, but stopped when the descriptions of what some of the jutsu could do made him feel nauseous. Why the hell would I want to make a guy implode? That's just sick, he thought with a judder, as he took his time to write down as much as he could. After a while he decided to stop, remembering that he still had to learn one of the scroll's techniques. With that in mind, he returned to the first one on the scroll. It had immediately piqued his interest, especially when he read the description a couple of times. This particular jutsu was a ninjutsu that he had purposely left from the stuff he had copied. Hokage Bunshin no Jutsu, a ninjutsu that creates solid clones of a person by evenly splitting their chakra. Unlike regular clones, these are not illusions, but perfect copies of the user that are capable of performing jutsu separately from the original. They can remain corporeal for prolonged lengths of time, but disappear when forcefully struck, once Naruto said as he read aloud the synopsis of the jutsu. Also, the Hokage Bunshin has a lesser-known side effect to its use. When a clone is dispersed, all of the experience it has gained returns to the user. This is due to the nature of the clone, with it being a physical and wholly corporeal copy with the emotions and memories of its creator. This makes the Hokage Bunshin very good for reconnaissance purposes, since their creator can send them to scout ahead safe in the knowledge that anything they learn immediately returns to them. After reading the description, Naruto couldn't help but grin with glee. Not only will I be passing the test to graduate, but I'll also be learning a really useful technique. I'll finally be able to create clones. This is going to be so cool, he thought, and with that he started to begin performing the steps required to learn the technique. Elsewhere, Iruka was alone in his apartment, thinking about the conversation that he had had earlier that day with the Hokage. He sighed as he recalled the Sandame's words. It had been after he had dismissed all of the graduates, after finishing the exam. The Hokage had been amongst the crowd, and had motioned for Iruka to follow him. The old man's words kept repeating themselves over and over in his mind. Iruka, the older man, began, looking the young Chunin in the eyes. Hi Hokage-sama, Iruka replied, his voice a mix of the usual honored reverence for his leader and an almost skeptical curiosity. I've been meaning to talk to you about something. What's that? You know I always have time for our conversations together. It's about your behavior towards one of your students, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto? What about him? Iruka asked, wondering why the Hokage would be interested in that particular pupil of his. He's a lot like you, isn't he? Like you, he is an orphan, and so like you, he has grown up with no parents to guide or teach him. I can see where you are going with this, Hokage-sama. You want me to ease up on him, but that is something that I cannot do. Oh really? Then maybe you should first listen to the reason why I am asking you this. The Sandame looked into the distance, as if pondering a lost memory. Naruto has always been alone. No one has been there to teach him, or comfort him when he is feeling sad. No one has even recognized that he even exists. So in order to make himself feel better, he performs pranks. By doing this, he can briefly be noticed and acknowledged by others, even all he gets is hate in return. I know that, but he was silenced with a raised hand. Sarutobi continued, we both know that Naruto has the demon Kyuubi sealed within him, but Naruto does not. Only those alive during the attack know this, but nobody sees Naruto for who he is. He gazed at the carved rock face of the Yondaime. The Yondaime Hokage wanted Naruto to be acknowledged as the hero of the village, the one who sacrificed his body to contain a terrible evil. But the adults of the village do not see Naruto as a hero, they only see the demons sealed inside of him. And their cold behavior has transferred to their children, so even if his peers do not know Naruto's secret, they still have a deep hate for him that they cannot explain. Sarutobi paused, waiting for his words to sink in before finishing. Do you know that when a person does not acknowledge another, their eyes show nothing when they gaze at that person? Not hate, anger, not joy nor love. All they are is empty and cold, colder than the harshest night in winter. A knocking on the door woke Irika from his thoughtful pondering. He moved to the door, the banging continuing. He opened it to reveal a panting Mizuki, dressed in his shinobi uniform. Mizuki, what are you doing here? Irika, it's Naruto. He's stolen the forbidden scroll from the Hokage residence, and run away. Everyone's out searching for him, some are talking about going so far as killing him, exclaimed the wheezing Chunin. Irika was stunned. Why would Naruto do something like steal the forbidden scroll? Sure, he would pull few pranks, but that was the farthest he ever went. Finding himself, Irika looked over at his colleague. You go join the others. I'll be along shortly, try to stall them until I get there, he said, shutting the door and racing to find his shinobi attire. Outside, Mizuki's face split into a cruel smile. He turned in the direction of the southern woods, where he knew Naruto was, and began to run with all haste. He briefly stopped to pick up the 2 Fuma shuriken he had stashed away, before continuing. I'll find Naruto, kill him and take the scroll. No one will miss him, in fact they'll be glad he is dead. It's foolproof, he thought, laughing maniacally as he ran. Later in the woods. Breathing heavily, Naruto collapsed onto the ground in a heap, all of his energy finally spent. It had taken everything he had, but he had mastered the jutsu in only a few hours. Now he would pass the test for sure, then he would finally be a ninja. His mind wandered into visions of himself with the Hokage hat on, standing proudly before a glorious sunrise, but it was interrupted when he heard footsteps. Looking up, he saw a very familiar sight. An angry Irika glaring down at him. It's all over, Naruto, he said, looking hard at his wayward student. He had to do a double take when he saw the condition he was in. All over Naruto's body were scuffs, bruises and marks that only intense training could produce. What has he been doing training? He thought. Scratching the back of his neck, Naruto grinned up at his sensei. Hey there, Irika-sensei, I wasn't expecting you to show up so soon. I only had time to master one technique, and I've only just finished doing that. What are you talking about, Naruto? Asked Irika, clearly puzzled by the boy's words. You know the jutsu I had to master for the secret graduation exam. Mizuki-sensei told me about it. He said I had to get the special forbidden scroll from the safe in the Hokage's house, then come here and master one jutsu from the scroll. Then you would pass me for sure. He knew everything, how the scroll was disguised, how to avoid the patrolling ANBU, where this place was, everything. It was kinda weird how he knew so much, but I did it. I mastered a jutsu and now you have to pass me, Irika-sensei. You have too, Naruto said, his excitement clearly increasing with every syllable. Mizuki? How could he? Realization dawned on Irika as he placed all of the pieces together in his mind, just in time to hear the telltale sound of metal flying towards him. He pushed Naruto out of the way and just had enough time to raise his arms in defense. As he did so, a hail of kunai slammed into him with such force that he was smashed against the wall of the cabin behind him. Most of the deadly instruments impacted safely against the wood behind him, but some managed to find purchase in his flesh. One grazed his shoulder whilst another embedded itself deeply in his thigh. He looked up to see Mizuki grinning madly at him, 2 large shurikens strapped to his back. Mizuki surveyed the scene before him and called out, Naruto, give me the scroll. No, Naruto. Don't give him the scroll. Mizuki used you to get it, and now he plans to steal it, and use its forbidden secrets to destroy the village. Don't trust him. Everything he says is a lie. Irika yelled, his body still rigid from the pain of the kunai attack. Mizuki scoffed, don't trust me? You're one to talk, Irika, considering you're the one that's been lying to him. Everyone has. Why don't I prove my trust, by telling Naruto the truth? Fear gripped Irika's heart as it leapt up into his throat. No, Mizuki, don't. He shouted desperately through gritted teeth. Naruto was confused. Not a minute ago he had been about to show Irika-sensei his cool new jutsu, and now Mizuki-sensei had attacked him and they were arguing with each other. What do you mean everyone's been lying to me? What's going on? Irika could swear that Mizuki's smile grew wider, if it were even physically possible. You know that 12 years ago, this village was attacked by the great demon Kyubi no Kitsune. It killed many people. It almost came close to destroying the village utterly. But the Yondaime Hokage defeated the Kyubi, thus saving everyone from the monster. Immediately after that time, a new law was passed. Law? What law? I haven't heard of any laws that mention the Kyubi. Nobody mentions it at all except in history lessons, Naruto retorted, not liking the tone Mizuki was using. Something at the very core of his being was twisting. It was like he instinctively knew that what he was about to hear would be bad. It was like a primal instinct. You wouldn't know because the law concerned you, Mizuki continued, his voice steadily rising to a fever pitch because the law states that nobody is ever allowed to tell you. His voice rose louder that you in fact are even louder. The QB, the nine-tailed demon fox that destroyed the village and killed everyone. By now he was clearly ranting, enjoying and glorifying and breaking down the young boy's spirit, tormenting him with a truth not meant to be heard. You are the demon that killed so many people, including Irika's parents, I might add. You were sealed away by the Yondaime, the man you respect so much. That's why everyone hates you, that's why Irika hates you. He may pretend to be your friend, but I'll wager that he's just toying with you, trying to win your trust so he can kill you himself. With those words said, Mizuki reached behind himself and unclipped one of the Fuma shuriken he had been carrying. Now die, demon! Return to the hell that spawned you! He cried out, throwing the shuriken with the insane strength only madmen have. The shuriken whipped through the arc, spinning so fast it was almost a blur. But Naruto didn't see it. All he saw were a myriad of flashing images in his head, as the truth Mizuki just told him speared through his heart, his mind, his entire being, rocking him to the core of his soul. Being thrown out of the orphanage at the age of 4, with only the clothes on his back for warmth. Stay away from my child, demon, a mother screamed, shielding her son from the monster before her. Get lost, you filthy demon brat, a drunken man shouted, throwing a bottle at a scared 8-year-old Naruto. Naruto, 5 years old, being taken by the kind old man Hokage to his new apartment, after he was found foraging for food in the trash. Standing by the swings watching parents quickly take their children home, leaving him all alone in a suddenly empty park. Crying himself to sleep at night, hoping the nasty people won't try to burn down his home again. Being failed for the 3rd time on the graduation exams, and watching parents congratulate their smiling children. Throughout this series of flashbacks, Naruto could feel a buzzing sensation build up in his head. It was like an insect at first, but slowly built into a terrible pulsing pain. He collapsed to one knee and clutched his head, his face contorting into a grimace, tears running down his cheeks, as his body convulsed violently. Blood started trickling down his chin as he bit his lip hard, such was the pain he was feeling. It was like a wild animal was within his skull, and it was trying to claw its way through the bone to get free. Naruto thought, as painful as thinking was, that he was dying. He wished he was, that he would just die and leave all of the pain and suffering behind him, but it didn't stop. It got harder, more forceful, a terrible soul-wrenching feeling. Then, just like that, after a seeming age of pain and mental torture, it all stopped. If he were to put it into words, he would say it was like a dam being released when the water pressure became too great. A blissful, sweeping sense of euphoria swept through Naruto, reinvigorating his tired limbs. Then he felt something wet drop on his face. Naruto snapped back into reality and found he was on his back, with Irika crouching over him. Irika had a shuriken embedded in his back, the shuriken Mizuki had intended for him. The wet drops he had felt were Irika's tears. He mouthed the word "why," but no sound came from his lips. He was too shocked to speak. You've always been alone, haven't you, Naruto? You've never had anyone be there for you, to congratulate you when you succeed or pick you up when you fail, said Irika, all his pent-up emotion boiling to the surface, tears flowing in small lines down his face. We're so alike, you and I. I too have always been alone. Ever since my parents died, I've had no one to help me either, to recognize me or congratulate me. Like you, I became the class clown, doing anything to be noticed, just to be seen and acknowledged in any way. My grades declined, life was always so hard, so painful. He paused as his memories played in front of his eyes. I see now that it was wrong of me to always put you down, even if it was with good intentions. I wanted you to achieve your goals by yourself, to become strong. To learn from your mistakes and be the best shinobi you ever could be. Naruto, I'm sorry. Hearing that broke through any barrier Naruto could erect around his already battered heart, and he broke down. Turning quickly, the forbidden scroll in his hands, he ran into the forest as fast as he could. Irika watched the young boy disappear into the undergrowth. Naruto, come back, he cried in desperation. Don't bother, drawled Mizuki, like you were talking to a naughty child. The Kyuubi is just like me, it'll do anything for power. He'll use the scroll and take revenge on the village for all the mistreatment it suffered. You saw the look in his eyes. Those are the eyes of a demon, and he threw his head back, laughing out loud like a madman. Now, if you don't mind, I have a scroll to collect and a demon to kill. He turned and looked Irika in the eyes. Then I'll be back for you, Irika. Don't go anywhere, he added before leaping into the trees. His manic laughter echoed through the woods long after he had left. Elsewhere, Mizuki raced through the trees as fast as he could push himself, cloaked in the Henji no Jutsu as Irika. If he could just get close enough to the brat, then killing him and taking the scroll would be child's play. But he just needed to find the crafty beast. Snarling, he scanned left and right until a figure caught his eye. There, it was Naruto jumping through the trees on all fours. I have you now, demon, he thought gleefully. Naruto, give me the scroll. I can take it away from here. Away from Mizuki, he called out to the boy, the jutsu changing his voice to match Iruka's tone perfectly. Naruto looked at him, and then in a sudden movement slammed bodily into Mizuki's gut. Feeling the wind force itself from his lungs, Mizuki fell backwards onto the ground beneath, the henge dropping immediately. How did you know I wasn't Iruka? He rasped, breathing heavily as he regained his composure. Naruto slumped against a nearby tree, and in a poof of smoke the answer was revealed. Because I am Iruka, you traitor, the newly revealed Iruka said with a gloating smile. Mizuki's eyes bulged with anger. How dare that amateur show him up like that? He was always stealing his glory, even during their days at the academy as children. Back then it had always been Iruka this and Iruka that, everyone feeling sorry for the poor orphan with his scar and little doe eyes. Why do you protect that demonic brat? He's going to kill everyone with the power of the scroll. Can't you see that I am the hero? I'll be the one to save everyone. As the adults were talking, Naruto leant against a tree close to the pair and listened, his heart thumping at 1,000,000 beats a second. He kept his breathing as quiet as possible to avoid detection. He had just witnessed Iruka fool Mizuki by using a henge to impersonate him, when Mizuki had been impersonating Iruka. And now Mizuki was ranting out loud about how he was going to kill Iruka now when he was leaving him for later, and how because of Iruka interference the scroll had gotten farther away and that he was condemning Konoha to destruction by letting the demon brat escape. It was all very nerve-wracking for the boy, who right now didn't really know who he was. Am I the Kyuubi or me? I don't know anymore what I am, he thought in desperation. Then he heard Iruka's reply, which changed everything for him. You're right, Mizuki. The Kyuubi would do that, but not Naruto. Naruto is everything the Kyuubi is not. He is kind, honest, and hardworking. He may screw up, but that only increases his resolve. He has suffered, but because of that he has gained empathy in return. I have never seen him give up, and I am proud of what he has become. That thing you mentioned is not the Kyuubi no Kitsune. He is Uzumaki Naruto of Konohagakure. Those words were like a beacon of light in absolute darkness for Naruto. After learning the truth of his origins, and digging up memories he had tried to forget, his mind was fragile. But hearing his sensei praise him, hearing him acknowledge his existence, it gave everything that had ever happened to him a purpose. Tears of happiness slid down Naruto's face as he felt accepted. Someone had recognized him for who he was, he finally had a person whom he could consider precious. He heard Mizuki scoff. You know, I was fully prepared to let you live just a little longer, he snapped, clearly annoyed, but you just changed my mind. Say goodbye, Iruka, he shouted, spinning the last of his Fuma shuriken in preparation of throwing it at the downed Chunin. He never got within 10 feet of Iruka, before an orange blur slammed into him, delivering a wicked knee to the face. Naruto, spurred by his sensei's words, had decided to act instead of hide. He fixed his gaze upon Mizuki, setting the forbidden scroll on the ground. If you touch my sensei, I'll kill you, he snarled. Bring it on, Fox, you don't stand a chance, raved Mizuki, angry that the demon had managed to even touch him. Try me, fool, Naruto said, bringing his hands into a cross-style seal that would soon become very familiar to him. Anything you throw at me, I'll return 1,000-fold. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. There was a vast explosion of smoke and noise, and when the smoke cleared, it revealed a clearing full of Narutos. Literally hundreds of identical copies, so many that the surrounding trees were full as well as the forest floor. Both Iruka and Mizuki were stunned into silence, mouths agape. Shadow clones, amazing. Those aren't illusions, but real physical copies. Naruto has learned, in the space of a few hours, a Jounin-level technique. A sea of orange-clad grinning faces all looked at Mizuki, who was turning left and right in panic trying to see a spot where there weren't Narutos. Cracking their knuckles as one, Naruto and the clones all spoke at the same time. Hey, I thought you were attacking. If you won't, we will, they said, and what followed was a short and very brutal beating for Mizuki. As one clone punched his face one way, another would kick him in the groin, whilst another elbowed him in the stomach. And so a pattern emerged of several hits leading to several hits as the Chunin was quickly overwhelmed by sheer weight of numbers, and what was left at the end was nothing more than a jumbled pile of bruises and broken bones. The clones dispersed themselves from the exertion, and Naruto felt a strange dizziness overcome him for a moment. But it quickly passed, and he turned to his sensei and grinned his trademark foxy grin. Guess I went overboard, huh, sensei, he said sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. Iruka smiled. Even after all he has learned, he is still the same Naruto, he thought, moving himself into a more upright position. Naruto, I want you to come over here and close your eyes for a second, okay? Naruto did as his sensei asked, even though he was puzzled as to why. He waited until he heard okay, you can open your eyes now, Naruto, before looking. He saw Iruka, except he was devoid of his forehead protector. Tentatively, he moved his hands up to his forehead, and felt smooth metal with his fingertips. Recognition dawned on his face, which was confirmed when he heard "Congratulations, you graduate." Joy unlike anything he had ever felt filled Naruto, and he leapt at his sensei, hugging the man around the waist with all his strength. Iruka smiled down at his now ex-pupil, and thought to himself, now you're a ninja Naruto, and this is just the beginning for you. You have a long and hard road ahead of you, but I know that you will do well. He then remembered the search teams, and got Naruto's attention with a playful knock on the head. Come on, idiot, we have to return this scroll to the Lord Hokage, and you need to apologize for stealing it, he reprimanded, falling slightly into sensei mode. Naruto agreed, and set off with his sensei and friend. Elsewhere, Sarutobi looked up from his clairvoyant crystal ball, smiling to himself. Naruto has learned of the fox, and the seal remains strong. This is a good sign. I had hoped the circumstances might have been of my own design, and far later on in his life, damn that fool Mizuki. Everything seems to be fine, but then there was that strange fit he seemed to have that came and went so suddenly. What could have caused that? Some form of latent mental trauma maybe. And then there was that presence I felt through the orb. He turned to the portrait of the dead Yondaime. Your presence, Minato-san. Sighing to himself at the puzzling development, Sarutobi turned and walked to inform the patrolling Jounin and Chunin that the Forbidden Scroll would soon be back shortly, and to go pick up a battered Mizuki. Naruto lay in bed, the fatigue from the previous night's actions finally catching up with him in spectacular fashion. He had taken the Forbidden Scroll back to Yaji Hokage and apologized for the trouble he had caused, fully expecting to have the tar beaten out of him by the horde of angry shinobi present. But the Hokage had simply smiled and told Naruto that he was glad that he and the scroll were safe. It was currently mid-morning, and Naruto had pulled down all of his blinds to stop the sun from streaming in and keeping him awake. Iruka-sensei had given him the day off from the academy to recover. After all, he didn't really need to go there until the graduation ceremony in 2 weeks when he would officially become a ninja, but there were some that kept going to revise anything they were lacking in. Now sleep claimed him, and Naruto closed his tired eyes. Before he fell asleep though, his mind briefly flickered back to when he learned about the Kyuubi from Mizuki. What had been the pain he had felt in his head? It had felt like something in his mind had cracked into 1,000 pieces, or something along those lines. Putting it out of his mind for the time being, Naruto's head hit the pillow and he embracing unconsciousness. Somewhere. Naruto rarely dreamed. His sleep was more like a power nap in many respects, rejuvenating for the body and not much else. But when he did dream, it would be fantastic epic dreams, filled with glory and ramen and him in a Hokage hat 6 times out of 10. But this was different. In his dream he was falling headlong through darkness and shadow for a seeming eternity. Moving his head as he fell, Naruto noticed a small patch amidst the dark. The patch grew larger and larger until he identified it as some form of ground, before realizing how quickly he happened to be moving towards said ground. Despite a massive amount of flailing of limbs and swimming through air, Naruto quickly slammed into the soft earth with a comic thudding sound, in a painful reunion with terra firma. He sat up, and shook his head to disperse the ramen bowls flying around him. When his eyes focused, Naruto was shocked to find that he was not awake in his room, as was customary with dreams when you are the recipient of a shock or fall. Rather, he was sitting in a large field of grass somewhere in the middle of a vast forest. Everywhere he looked, his surroundings had a strange grayish hue, like a ghostly after effect. Hey, I know this place, it's what the hell is up with my voice? He shouted aloud. As if to match his strange surroundings, Naruto's voice had developed a disjointed echo as if he were standing in a cave. After waiting a few minutes, Naruto called out again. Hello, anyone out there? But the echo remained. You're here earlier than I expected, a ghostly voice rang out across the open space. Now Naruto was official and way out there freaking weird mode. First he winds up in a weird gray place that's strangely familiar to him, then he gets this spooky talking after effect, and now he was hearing a voice from nowhere. What's more, it was a voice that he recognized. That's the voice from the woods, the one that told me to copy the jutsu from the Forbidden Scroll, he thought. Hey, who's out there? Look, I'm really pissed right now, so whoever you are, stop jerking me around. He shouted, waiting for a response. There was a long, profound pause. Much earlier than expected, I was hoping you would be at least 16. Kids are so irritating sometimes, he heard the voice call out. Arrrrrr, show yourself, coward. Naruto was now quite angry. If you want come out, then just leave me alone. I don't know where the hell I am, and the last thing I need is some nut job that gets off stalking kids with his creepy ghost voice. Sigh, fine then, have it your way. Man, I see what Sensei used to mean when he said I was a pain in the ass. Here's the genetic proof. Turn around, kid, so I can look at you better. Naruto whipped around to face the voice, suddenly so close when it had been so far away. What he saw was an image straight out of shinobi legend, drilled into them at the academy, and carved into the very bedrock of the village. He wore the garb of a Konoha shinobi, black loose-fitting clothes with a green flak vest covering the torso. But what separated him from a usual shinobi were the following trademark features. Over the ordinary shinobi attire was a long white trench coat, with an upturned collar that framed a famous face. With shocking blue eyes and a mess of spiky blonde hair, Naruto recognized immediately the man who saved Konoha from the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the Yondaime Hokage. Naruto paled. "You're the Well, you should know my face at least. It is carved into the damn mountainside." He turned to the side and spoke under his breath. "Although they never did justice to me, would it have killed them to give me a smile, even a small one? Nope, instead I get to be stiff-face number 4. But you're dead. You died saving Konoha from the weight. You're the bastard that put the fox inside of me, you son of a bitch. If you're here talking to me and you're not dead, I'll kill you, you bastard." Naruto screamed as he ran at the man, anger evident on his face. Thoughts spun through his mind at breakneck speed. It's because of him that I was alone. It's because of him that I was hated. It's because of him fueling the growing torrent of repressed emotions. The Yondaime saw the incoming attacks with crystal clarity, but decided to receive them nonetheless. The boy was right, he did owe him so much. So allowing himself to be beaten up by the kid would serve the purposes of starting the emotional healing and giving the kid time to vent. Sighing to himself, the former Hokage stood still as Naruto punched him square in the face, and then as he hit him in the gut. To the boy's credit, the blows did knock the wind out of him, but the older man quickly recovered and kept his ramrod position as Naruto repeatedly beat his chest with all his strength. The blows eventually started getting softer and softer, sinking lower as Naruto slumped to his knees and beat against the man's stomach and thighs in vain. Best let him get this out of his system, he thought. He'll need a clear head. And I owe it to him, per QOF, least that solves the question of whether or not we feel physical sensations in this place. His thoughts were interrupted when he heard the sound of crying, and he looked down at a sobbing young boy, still vainly hitting him even though his anger and energy were spent. Naruto looked up at the man claiming to be the Yondaime. "Why," he exclaimed during sobs, "why did you choose me? Out of all the babies that were born, you had to choose me. I don't even have any parents to help me, I'm alone. I've always been hated because of this thing you put there, everyone staring like I don't even exist. And you knew this would happen and still you did it anyway." The man flinched at the accusations. He had been expecting them, but that still didn't stop them from being any more painful to hear. Surprising the young boy, he drew him into a warm hug, holding Naruto whilst he cried into his chest. "I'm sorry, son. I never expected them to treat you like they did. I should have anticipated the small-mindedness of the men when faced with things they do not understand. I always knew they saw only face value and still I persisted. I was an idiot to think they would praise you as the hero you are." Naruto stiffened when he heard that word. What are you talking about?" he asked, a hopeful wariness in his voice. The Yondaime smiled. "Come on, use that stunted brain of yours. You think it's coincidence that we both have this spiky blonde hair and these handsome blue eyes that all the chicks love. My title in life was Yondaime Hokage, the 4th elected leader of the shinobi of Konohakagure no Sato. But I also had another name, one known to many during my lifetime." "What's that?" Naruto asked as he wiped his eyes of tears. "Namikaze Minato, I am your father Naruto," the man replied. "Father and Namikaze?" the boy asked. Confusion was evident in his face, whilst his voice held a sort of hopeful wariness. His mind began to work through the hints the man had supplied, drawing an almost impossible conclusion that he hoped beyond hope would be true. The words, "You think it's coincidence that we both have this spiky blonde hair and these handsome blue eyes that all the chicks love," repeated themselves over and over in his head. The thoughts that passed through his brain stopped Naruto cold. After all that had happened to him tonight, he had pretty much come to the conclusion that there were no more big surprises that could be thrown his way. But whatever freakish law of the cosmos controlling random crap seemed to have it in for him, because this new upset topped all that had come before it by a long shot. He had always considered that he would never meet his parent after assuming they were already dead, and he was right in most respects, that he would always be alone with no family at all. He may not have admitted it then, but he always in some small part hated the other kids for having parents when he didn't. Only he had no one. All the other orphans were eventually adopted, but he was left in his cold small apartment to eke out his sad solitary existence. Pushing away slightly, Naruto eyed the historical figure carefully. "Prove it," he posed to the man. Since they did not share the same clan name, the only proof of that the man before him was his sire was image alone, which in the world of shinobi was not always a set-in-stone thing. Minato looked at the kid, creased his brow in question. Cunning little bastard, just like his mother. She didn't believe she was pregnant until the bump appeared. It always had to be concrete proof for her, he thought, shaking his head at the similarities occurring before his eyes. If you're wondering about the name thing, Namikaze is my clan name and Uzumaki is your mother's. We never had a chance to marry because of the hectic lives we both led as adults, and she wanted to preserve her clan's memory after the decimation. You were given her name out of reverence for your ancestors, plus it helped keep you anonymous in a world that had a lot of issues with this face, he said, pointing at his forehead in a comical fashion. Minato pulled away and stared into the distance at the shadowy copy of his home. He then looked down at Naruto. I will not ask for you to forgive me, I shall only ask you to understand the reasons why I did what I did. When you take up the mantle of Hokage, you take a silent vow to protect the village and all those who occupy its boundaries, even at the cost of your own life. All of my actions had to be performed with the greater good in mind, and though I hated some of them, those were the sacrifices that were demanded of me. When the Kyuubi was sighted heading towards the village, I immediately knew that it was my time to die, my time to sacrifice myself. Minato paused for a moment as Naruto listened with intent, then continued his explanation. But I also realized when I made my decision that I still lacked the raw power necessary to kill the damn thing. Its strength stems from something primeval, something that we mortals couldn't even hope to contemplate or understand. So I knew that I would have to seal it away, but I also knew that sealing it within an inanimate object would not provide the prison required. So I had to seal it within an infant, the strongest prison possible. Naruto, listening intently throughout the explanation, stirred suddenly as a question popped up in his mind. Why are infants the strongest prison for demons? Surely there's something else like a shrine with wards and stuff. Minato smiled at the question and paused for a second. After all of this, he still wants to learn more. It must be the seal. When an infant is first born, their soul is as pure as snow. It is untainted by any outside influence, and a pure soul is the greatest prison for any demon or creature of evil. It is anathema to them. Oh, then why is a seal needed? The seal is the lock that holds the prison in place. It contains the demon and leans to the purity of the child's soul for strength. Even if the child grows up to be evil or misguided, the seal will not weaken as it was created at the time when the soul is strongest. What kind of seal locks the bijou in place is up to the one sealing it, but that is of no consequence. You have nothing to fear from the Kyuubi Naruto. That seal on your navel will hold indefinitely. It may weaken, but it will never break. The fox can smash into it for an eternity, and all it will do is give itself a headache. A bead of sweat slipped down Naruto's brow as he gulped nervously. Well, that's good to know, I guess. But you still didn't answer my question. Why did you pick me, when there were many other kids to choose from? The older man bit his lip and looked aside, choosing his words carefully. He started slowly, you are my son, and continued with slightly more confidence behind his words. I thought if anyone could withstand the mental and physical pressure of being the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi, it would be you, my own flesh and blood. I had faith in you, faith in your strength of will to bear this burden. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. And I still do, kiddo, he added with a foxy grin. Despite his intention to stay skeptical at the claim, Naruto began to find himself believing what was being said. There was no possible way that such a story could be fabricated. The details were so extensive that lies would be easy to spot. Could this man be his lost family, someone who shared his blood, and what's more, claim himself to be his father? From beyond the grave he had been granted a small precious gift by whatever kami watched over him in heaven. He felt a sudden overwhelming sense of happiness, like a vast weight had been lifted from his shoulder and broken into microscopic pieces. Not knowing what to do, Naruto just responded as any child would to a parent and hugged the man tight around the waist, tears streaming down his face once again. But these were not tears of anger or sadness, but tears of joy. So that's where I got that from, Naruto thought, looking at the grinning face. He couldn't help but feel reassured by it. It was a comforting smile. His face then took a look of sadness, staring hesitantly at the grass beneath his feet. Dad. I forgive you, I guess. The former Hokage looked at his heir with surprise, but quickly schooled his features into a warm smile. He was about to say something to break the ice, but was silenced when Naruto continued. I realized that it wasn't your fault. You made a choice from what little you had with only the best intentions in mind for me. And besides, it'd be stupid of me to push away the only family I have, even if you are a ghost or whatever. He ended with a weak smile, wiping away any unfallen tears still on his face. Smiling at his son, Minato gave the boy a playful shove and began to look him up and down with the analytical expertise of a trainer, his critical eye missing no detail whatsoever. Pacing around him, he mumbled under his breath, okay, let's have a look at you. Oh, that's good, right? Okay then. Well, you look like you turned out okay, all things considered. Your body's in pretty good shape, decent bone structure, and good muscle tone for a kid your age. Now, as to the reason why you are here. Recently, have you felt any sharp pain in your head, right at the back, like a killer headache, only worse? Naruto crossed his arms and assumed what could only be considered a position of deep thought, his face set in a deep frown. If it were possible, Minato swore he could hear the cogs turning the boy's head. Then Naruto's head perked up as he remembered. You mean that explosion in my head when that Baka Mizuki attacked Iruka-sensei and told me about the Kyuubi? That was pretty painful, it felt like I was dying or something. Minato blinked at yeah. Could you, tell me all of what happened? Don't leave anything out. Yeah, okay, so Naruto recited to his father the sequence of events that led up to their meeting from his failing the graduation exam. His talk with Mizuki, being told to steal the forbidden scroll and stealing said scroll, training in the Kage Bunshin, and then beating Mizuki. Minato listened patiently throughout the whole explanation, occasionally asking questions or for Naruto to repeat something. After he finished, Naruto watched his father patiently as the man muttered to himself, mulling over his son's explanation. He managed to pick up small words like seal or unknown, and listened harder. Who would have thought that mental trauma could preempt the seal's activation? That never showed up once in any of my calculations, he said out loud, clearly troubled by the news. Old man, dad, pap, or whatever you want me to call ya, what seal are you talking about? The Kyuubi seal? Naruto asked. No, the seal in your head, the one that's broken prematurely, Minato replied, waving his arm in a shooing motion, as if stating an obvious fact. Wah! There's a seal in my damn head. Seriously, Naruto shouted in confusion, damn it, old man, what the hell did you do to me as a kid? Minato stopped, and slowly turned to look at his son. The boy was wearing an angry, accusing glare, with his arms crossed tapping one foot. He sighed and looked at the ground dejectedly. Even as a damn spirit, I still think out loud. Will that habit ever leave me? Will it? He thought with a worried smile. Before I give you an explanation, why don't we go take a walk to find somewhere more suitable, he said calmly, clearly trying to put water over a very possible fire. Naruto huffed, you'd better. I want to know why I can see you, where I am, and what the hell a seal is doing in my head. And followed his wayward father. Silence dominated the pair as they walked towards Konohagakure and passed through the great gates, which naturally were already completely open. They walked around for a while until, at Naruto's insistence, they stopped at the small inviting comfort of a certain ramen stand. Minato stopped outside and gazed nostalgically at the sign Ichiraku. Man, this place brings back memories, he said with a sigh. You went here, Dad? Naruto asked. Minato grinned, yeah, all the time. Ramen's my favorite food after all, he added with thumbs up. Naruto grinned as well. My dad is so cool, he thought happily. Anyone who liked ramen was a saint in Naruto's humble opinion. They went inside and sat down. Now if only I had some ramen, this would be perfect, Naruto thought to himself. Then, as if by magic, a steaming bowl of ramen seemed to form into existence from the grayish air. What the hell? He shouted, jumping back in surprise. He pointed at the newly formed, and oh so tempting, bowl of ramen. The smell caught his nostrils and his expert ramen scanner went into overdrive. Miso with a hint of pork, he thought, and began to wolf down the bowl's contents at breakneck speed. It felt strange eating knowing your stomach wasn't really being filled, but dwelling on that fact made Naruto's head hurt, so he dismissed it. This world is your creation. Whilst you're here, your thoughts can manifest themselves in a quasi-corporeal state. So if you feel like eating, you can eat, Minato explained, looking down at his own newly formed bowl. Naruto looked up with a mouth full of ramen. Huh was the only muffled noise that came out of his mouth. Taking that as his cue, Minato began to lecture his son in the history and functions of the seal. Let me explain. I said before that there is a seal in your head. And it's true that I know this because I put it there. You see, Naruto, during the Third Great Secret War, before you were born and I was chosen as Yondaime, I started developing a seal that I believed would both win us the war and any other conflicts in the future. I devised a method that placed the seal within the mind of whomever I applied it to, which would revolutionize the way a shinobi could advance their skills and learn. I named the seal the Shinten Kuyo Fuin, because of the effects it has upon a human body. The seal is applied at birth, and is timed to release when the shinobi's body starts to produce hormones and enter natural physical development at puberty. My seal, when applied directly to the brain, and therefore their mind, would triple their natural learning rate and memory capacity, as well as increase their mental IQ by more than 75. He started waving his hands as if he became more vigorous in his explanation. This would allow them to learn things faster and retain an infinitely greater level of information than they could normally. They could be able to memorize a mission scroll in seconds and in minutes come up with hundreds of strategies and ideas to apply to the scenario it creates. They could witness a jutsu once, and be able to break it down into its composite stages mentally, effectively copying the jutsu itself. With this effect also comes the opportunity for modifications to be made to the jutsu, if the shinobi could think of any. He stopped his explanation briefly, allowing a minute or so for the information to seep in before continuing. You have to realize, Naruto, there are many terrible things created during war. War creates desperation, and in that desperation many mistakes are made. Shinobi like yourself, who have a bija sealed within them, are raised as a living weapon should the country need it, and jutsu with fearsome destructive power are created. My seal would have ensured that Konoha would never have to resort to such measures, they would always be protected. Because the seal, the village would have at its disposal a cadre of elite shinobi ready to be marshaled at a moment's notice, with the ability to wield complicated high-rank jutsu with ease and complete missions with a success rate of 100%. Barely a week after you were born, I finally managed to perfect it. His face grew forlorn, as dark memories played across his mind like a nightmare that won't go away. But then the Kyuubi came, and my hand was forced. I knew what I would have to do, sealing the Kyuubi within you as I explained before. But I also made other plans. You would be part of my contingency plan, my means of defending Konoha in the future years to come. I applied the Shinten Koyo Fuin to you when you were 3 weeks old, before the attack of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. I then stockpiled and stored away masses of information concerning Konoha, the other hidden villages, and the lands they reside in, anything I could find. Be it history, general information, medical records, jutsu scrolls, building schematics, everything was copied and filed away in a special vault deep within the mountains north of the village. With this information stored away, and the seal within your head giving you its abilities, I believed it would be possible to resurrect the village if it was destroyed by the Kyuubi. The evacuated village population would rebuild it, and you would be the figurehead to lead them through the adversity. Naruto listened, a half-finished ramen bowl testament to the maelstrom of thoughts and images going through his head. He then began to speak, being careful to keep his voice and body controlled from the excitement bubbling beneath the surface. So what you're saying is, I have a special seal that no one can see, that'll make me into a one-of-a-kind, elite, super strong, super smart ninja? Minato nervously scratched the back of his head. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You were the first and only one the seal was applied to, and the method died with me. I may need to check for side effects, but they show OFF. For the second time that day, Erasure felt the wind knocked out of him by a killer hug from his only child. Naruto's grip was so strong a crowbar couldn't have prized him off. Overbalanced by the new weight around his midriff, the dead Hokage fell off his stool onto the floor. Naruto was ecstatic. In the past 1.5 days 3 great things had happened to him. First, he had been passed by Iruka-sensei to become a genin. Then he had met the spirit of his father. And now he had learned he alone possessed a special seal that would make him super smart. Now Hokage's gonna be a dead cert. For me, I'll be stronger than Sandaimjiji and Dad put together, he thought happily. Thank you now will be the best ninja the village in the Virion. You will finally respect me. You're such a cool dad. Thank you. Words just seemed to speed from his mouth in a barrage with no cohesive thought behind them. Then Naruto stopped in mid-sentence as a question popped into his head. So what about this place? You haven't explained that yet. I didn't? Okay then, let's sit down. The dust is messing up my clothes, and it's difficult to find a place to clean them in the spirit world, Minato joked. Now where to start? The world we are in is not the spirit world itself, but an extension of that plane of existence. I called this place the Shinzi Hashi, as that's what it is. When I was developing my Shiki Fujin, I hit upon an effect of signing a contract with a Shinigami. During my sleep, I was plagued by visions of the spirits of those long since dead. I knew that because one of them was my father, long may he rest. That reminds me, he said he wanted to see me about something. He scratched his head for a second. Doesn't matter. He continued, anyway, after consulting with the monks at the Temple of Fire, I found that through controlled meditation I was able to control the visions. And when I added chakra to the process, I eventually landed on a method for creating an artificial dream world to provide a medium for my subconscious to interpret the visions visually. Through it, I could communicate with the spirits of the dead in the dream world whilst in a meditative trance. I called it the Shinzi Hashi, and that's where we are. We are communicating in this artificial world of your creating, which is why when you thought of ramen, a bowl formed in front of you. It was created by your subconscious. Wow, wait a sec. How can I make this place with my mind? I don't know how to do this jutsu. I was never taught it or anything. Once again my fault. After I applied the Shinten Koyo Fuin, I used the same process of mind application to place the jutsu within your infant memory. The brief explanation is that I taught it to you as I was applying the seal. It took some work to perform both processes simultaneously, but I wasn't called a genius for nothing. This means that you can perform the jutsu like you have been doing so for years, which you kinda have. Was that the only jutsu you put in my head? Naruto asked hesitantly. Pretty much, there wasn't much time for anything else. What with this giant red fox on my doorstep at the time, Minato replied. Oh, Naruto said, trying to hide the slight disappointment in his voice. Seeing the disappointment on his son's face, Minato patted him on the shoulder. Come on, let's go somewhere else to talk more. I haven't seen you since you were 3 weeks old, so there's a lot of catching up to be done. Naruto laughed and followed his father once more through the streets of Shadow Konoha. They talked a little as they walked, Naruto telling Minato about his life, hobbies, important events, and so on. Everything they had missed they were sharing freely, much easier after their discussion at the ramen stand. Minato in turn talked about his childhood, growing up, becoming a ninja. During these moments Naruto listened intently, eagerly absorbing anything he could on his family and heritage. He learned that the Namikaze had been a part of Konoha since its founding. He wasn't told how. His father would only mention that the clan's founder was very close to the Niji brothers Hashirama and Yanagi, or to give them their full titles in history, the Shodame and Naidame Hokage. This amazed Naruto. He could have never dreamed that his clan could have been so important. But there was more. Minato continued as they walked past the hospital. Throughout the years, as the village fought in each of the great secret wars, our clan dwindled. Many died, some married and took up their wives' clan name, and we quickly diminished into a small group. Clans like the Hyuga and the Uchiha rose to prominence, their Kekkei Genkai ensuring their power during the conflicts. True, the Namikaze were elite in most senses. We even had a district in the northeast quarter of the village all to ourselves during the heydays of the clan. But by the time I was born, there were 3 families left. Mine, my uncles and my aunts, but she married a Hyuga branch member after Uncle Nagar died from illness. So, am I the last of the Namikaze bloodline still alive? Naruto inquired, the sad history of his clan darkening his previously happy mood. Pretty much. You're the last of both the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, though last I heard your mother's aunt was still alive and kicking. Seriously? What part of the village does she live in? Why haven't I seen her about? Why wasn't I told about her? Security reasons probably, Minato replied, a slight frown on his face. They really have kept him in the dark, haven't they, he thought. Huh. How can I put this? Your aunt doesn't live in Konoha. She doesn't even live in the Ho no Kuni. As he spoke, they stopped walking and Minato stared up at the Hokage memorial as he recalled the memory of his wife. They were in a small square that overlooked the stone faces of the Hokage. Minato leant against the railing. Your mother's clan, the Uzumaki, were born in a small country known as Uzumaki no Kuni, though that land is long since dead from events you're too young to learn about right now. Now where was I? Oh yeah, your mother's aunt. She married into a clan known as the Mitiki, who reside in Kusakagure, the shinobi village of Kusa no Kuni. I first met your mother during an alliance mission to Uzumaki no Kuni. It was a small country with no shinobi village to protect it from invaders. Its only defense was an alliance made up of specific shinobi clans. The Uzumaki were one of those clans. Uzumaki no Kuni were a series of linked islands bordering the combined lands of Mizu no Kuni to the east. During the period of healing between what would be known as the Second and Third Great Secret Wars, the then ruling daimyo of Mizu no Kuni came up with a brutal expansion strategy. He believed that in order to increase his nation's power and importance he would need more tithes from its people, but since the population of Mizu no Kuni is limited by the number of islands within its borders, the tithes were limited. So in order to remedy this fact, the man ordered Kirigakure to assault the smaller neighboring countries bordering Mizu no Kuni, forcing the daimyos of these countries to accept assimilation and fealty to him. If they resisted, every man, woman and child would be killed and the lands burned to the ground and assimilated anyway. Uzumaki no Kuni was one of these island nations, and when Kirigakure forces invaded, the daimyo of Uzumaki no Kuni requested aid from Konoha to repel the invaders. Knowing that too many representatives of the village would endanger the tenuous relationship between Konohagakure and Kirigakure, 3 teams were sent, including my own. That was when I met your mother. We first met during a skirmish. Our teams arrived in time to repel some Kirigakure shinobi trying to assault a village. It was close fought because a majority of the shinobi that had been sent were of Chunin or Jounin level, making their skills formidable, and during the battle your mother mistook me for one of the enemy. As I was fighting this one guy, I caught a glimpse of her charging towards me. Out off the blue, the most beautiful woman I had ever seen attacking me with all the subtlety of a rampaging elephant. I was so dazed I took a kunai to the right thigh, still got the scar. By now he was in a sort of romantic daze, his eyes hazy with the memories. The invading forces were eventually repelled long enough for the civilian populations to be evacuated, but the daimyo was assassinated in his house during the confusion. Without a leader, Uzumaki no Kuni dissolved overnight, with the vast majority of the population moving to Ho no Kuni and the other inland countries to make a fresh start on things. The Uzumaki clan was mostly wiped out in the fighting to repel the invaders. Only a few families within the clan survived to move to Konoha. Your mother's family was one of them, and she became a fully fledged shinobi soon afterwards. We met more often after she apologized for nearly castrating me, seeing each other whilst off duty, and from there, well, a romance blossomed. He paused for a deep breath, exhaling slowly. We fell in love, it's as simple as that. After the third secret war came and went, she decided to retire from service like some shinobi do after fighting in wartime. She moved in with me around the time I became yandame, and after a while she fell pregnant with you. But a single tear trickled down his face. She died. She and many others gave their lives to stall the QB long enough for me to bring my plan of sealing it into fruition. Realizing the tears on his cheeks, Minato quickly wiped them from me. Naruto was crying also, and in his head he remarked on how often of late he seemed to be doing that. With a sudden force, Minato grabbed his son by the shoulders and twisted him so he looked into his eyes, speaking in a low, forceful tone. Now you listen to me, Naruto, and listen well. Don't you ever, for 1 second, blame yourself for Kushina's death. It was the demon, and the demon alone. It is a separate entity to you. She died for your life, and the lives of every villager in Konoha. I lost both my wife and my own life that day, but we sacrificed ourselves to give you a fresh start, and we met each other on the other side proud of the knowledge that you still existed. Granted, your treatment has been less than satisfactory, but that cannot be helped now. If you want to mull over some karmic crap, then consider this. Your mother, my wife, lives through you. Her spirit, her essence flows through you, protecting you for the rest of your days. As does mine. Do you understand? Naruto just looked at his dad. Do you understand? Minato shouted. Naruto nodded, and the pair was silent for a while, just standing quietly gazing at the carved rock faces on the mountainside. It was Naruto that broke the silence. Dad, if I can see you in this place, this world. Can I see Mom? Minato smiled. It's not that simple. It's true that this plane is a means of bridging the gap between the land of the living and the land of the dead. But for them to come here, the spirits must both want to come here, and have knowledge of this place's existence. Yes, it's true that your mother fulfills both criteria, and she wants to see you more than anything. It's just she's a little nervous, that's all. You'll see her eventually when you're both ready for it. Naruto's mood brightened at this. It seemed that after all the crap he had gone through in life, now he was finally getting a hell of a lot of good. In the space of one very long dream/vision/thing, he had learned pretty much every answer to all the questions concerning his past. He had parents, a clan to call his own. Relatives still living, albeit in another country. Who else am I gonna meet, once I got used to making this place, or whatever happens, he asked. Kid, you're gonna meet people here that will open your eyes, his father replied cryptically. Anyway. You told me during our nice enlightening conversation that you wanted to become Hokage like your old man. Now I'm gonna ask you now, are you serious? His voice took a mock stern tone because if you aren't committed 100%, you'll lose out to some other gifted genius like that Uchiha kid you mentioned. No son of mine is going to enter into something without following through. You got that? Naruto did a salute and grinned 100% SIR. I will be Hokage no matter what. And with a will like that I'm sure you will cherish your thought. Good, now to business. I can't train you, even during our meetings here. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. What I can do is guide you, the rest is up to you. You train yourself in the real world, and come to me for advice when you need it. I mean, not like I'm one to brag, but I am a kick-ass sensei. My best student Hitaki Kakashi made Jounin at 13, was on his way to ANBU Captain too if I remember right. Course I was alive then, and he was a born genius like myself, but met with the details. Who's he? You'll meet him eventually. Now, this has been nice, but you need to wake up soon, otherwise people think you're in a coma or something. To sever your connection with the Shinzi Hashi, put your hands into this seal. He demonstrated it. Both hands were flat, palms against one another like the snake seal. The thumbs were entwined and the middle fingers were at a 90-degree angle. Naruto went to form the seal, but was stopped by his father. Just a sec there, son. I haven't finished talking yet. Once you form the seal, simply say Shinzi Hashi Kai and you should exit this place and return to your body. There are no side effects that I know of. It will be just like waking up from a deep sleep. Now, as your new sensei, here are my first orders. Go to that old coot Sarutobi and ask for the fourth will. He should know what to do. It's okay to tell him about this. He is one of the most trustworthy people I know of. Follow the instructions provided. They will lead you to a place where you can train in solitude away from prying eyes. Study the basics first. Fill in any blanks that you feel need to be addressed. Don't just go barging in learning as many cool ninjutsu as possible. A firm foundation leads to a strong home, as my old man used to tell me. Now go make me proud, son. He finished, giving his boy a quick hug. Naruto returned the hug, formed the seal he was shown, and called out Shinzi Hashi Ki. For a second it seemed like nothing had happened. Then he felt a disjointed feeling, like a form of vertigo. Then, it was as if the ground gave way beneath his feet, and his body seemed to disintegrate before his eyes. He fell through an endless blackness, and as a bright light flooded his vision, he thought he saw a woman's face. She had long red-brown hair and startling blue eyes. She said his name, but then disappeared into the light. Naruto screamed for an age as the light took him. Real world. Aoag, he woke with a scream and for a few minutes sat upright, breathing heavily. What a weird dream. Wait, that wasn't a dream. That really was my dad, and memories flooding his drowsy mind as the night's events replayed in his head. Naruto smiled to himself, and as he thought of what he must do, he couldn't help but utter, "Lookout world, there's a new Naruto now." Later. "Okay kid, just stand still and don't pull any weird faces, okay," said a gruff voice from beneath a camera cloth. "Just take the damn picture, will ya?" Naruto replied. It was the morning after his meeting with his dad, and he was getting his picture taken for his official ninja records. He had been thinking about doing something artistic like a sneer with vivid face paint tattoos, but had settled for his trademark grin slightly toned down to make him seem like a normal person. He was wearing his new forehead protector with pride, the polished metal glinting in the sun. The picture was taken, he paid the man for it, and walked away in the direction of the Hokage building. He remembered the advice he had been given by Iruka-sensei after returning the Forbidden Scroll to the Hokage. Iruka walked with Naruto as they both returned home. Since his apartment was only a short ways from Naruto's, Iruka decided to walk the boy home and give him a small lecture on what was going to happen now he had graduated, as Naruto had missed being told it with the rest of the class, due to the whole failing the exam thing. "Naruto, now that you've graduated, you will have a period of 3 weeks away from the academy before you have to return to be assigned your Jounin sensei and be placed in 3-man squads. So I advise you in that time to get rest up, take things easy and prepare, okay," he said, looking down at the tired, but happy boy. "Sure thing, Iruka-sensei, that means I have 3 whole weeks to train with no distractions." "Oh yeah, and you need to have your picture taken and fill in a form registering yourself as a shinobi of Konoha, and hand it in at the Hokage building." "Great, that means I'm gonna have to spend every bit of cash I have paying for a picture. Great, can my life get any worse?" "Oh yeah, I forgot. I has to be handed in by tomorrow or there will be an extra month's delay, and you won't be a ninja until the forms are fully processed," the man added with a carefree smile. "Way out." Grumbling to himself about the overcharged cost of the picture, Naruto went through what he had been told to do by his father. "Okay, I need to take this into the Hokage building and ask old man Sandaime for the force will. Then I follow the instructions on the will and begin training or something like that," he thought to himself. There was something else that was worrying him. The seal in his head. His father had described what effects it will have on his mind, like the increased memory and intellect, but would the changes stop there? He had scared himself earlier when he gazed at 2 old men playing shogi. He had never really played or shown much interest in the game, but after 5 minutes discreetly watching he found himself going over strategies in his head, and had to stop himself from pointing out to one of the geezers what to him seemed like a blatantly obvious move. Clearly he was getting smarter, but how would that change who he was? "Might as well just accept that the old dumbass me is soon going to be a thing of the past," he muttered out loud as he approached the Hokage building. He entered and made his way to the room where the Sandaime currently was, as pointed out by an overly friendly Chunin. "Man, that guy really was laying in on thick. Guess he didn't want to show himself up by telling me to get lost," Naruto thought with a chuckle. People's behavior towards him tended to go down 3 directions. 1. They were either overly friendly to hide their hate for him. 2. They showed open vindictive behavior because they didn't care. And 3, which was an especially new kind of attitude, was that they accepted him for who he was and treated him with kindness. So far it was only Iruka-sensei, old man Sandaime, Tuchi-san and Ayam-chan that treated him like a real person. And his dad, of course. He entered the room where the Hokage was with his Chunin helpers, and handed in his registration form. "Hey old man Sarutobi, can I talk to you for a moment in private please?" he asked, indicating to the Chunin when he said private. "Of course, Naruto. Kotetsu Izumo, that will be all for today. If you could take the remaining paperwork and place it in my office I would be grateful. I can finish this all later," the old Hokage told his subordinates. The 2 men bowed slightly and left with their individual piles of paper. "Now Naruto, what can I do for you that would warrant such an impromptu private meeting?" "I would like the force will, if it's not any trouble." This statement made the old man's smile fall into a frown, which was quickly replaced by a more neutral yet cheerful expression. "I see, and why are you asking me a question like that, Naruto, if you don't mind me asking?" he asked, trying to sound nonchalant. "I suppose it's okay to tell him about last night," Naruto thought, and he proceeded to tell the old man about his trip to the Shinzui Hashi world, meeting his father, learning about the Shinten Koya Fuin in his mind and the nature of the Shinzui Hashi. At the end of his tale Sarutobi with slow deliberate precision took out his pipe, filled it, lit it, and took a deep inhalation. "Minato-san, the wonders you could accomplish. It's no surprise that they could continue from beyond the grave," he thought as he breathed out a trail of smoke. "So you know of your origins, I'm glad. It was painful lying to you all these years, I hope you understand that, and now I can at least relax some. He laughed as a sudden memory popped into his head. Your father was a great man. I saw that even when he was a little boy, when he insisted his friends called him Yandame. He was much like you, saying things like when I'm Hokage I'm gonna bring this place out of the Dark Ages and make it great. And he would have. If not for the fox, I know Naruto finished for him. Indeed. Now Naruto, you must realize that you are to tell nobody what you told me, unless you are sure you can trust them 100%. Your father was only leader of this village for a short period, but he still had enemies from that time and before. Sarutobi intoned, his eyes and voice evoking a deadly seriousness that Naruto had never seen before. I understand. I also expect the same courtesy of you. I don't want the weirdos on the council learning new stuff about me. They hate me as it is, anything like this would just be fuel for the fire. Naruto replied nonchalantly. Very well. Now, if you'll follow me to my office we can look at. He motioned to the door, but was interrupted by the sound of thumping feet behind it. The door slid open to reveal a young boy. He was dressed in a t-shirt with the Konoha leaf, a skull cap that covered his head but for a small tuft of spiky black hair sticking out of the top, and a long blue scarf wrapped several times around his neck. It was the same scarf that caused him to trip and fall spectacularly in front of the pair. He got up, dusted himself off and glared at Naruto and Sarutobi in equal measure. Hey you, who do you think you are, tripping me up like that? He turned to the oldest of the two. I've come to fight you, old man. He shouted in his high-pitched child's voice, holding his one dulled shuriken in defiance. He was about to move when he found himself facing a very irate blonde-haired blue-eyed ninja hopeful. Who do I think I am? Who do you think you are, you little idiot? You fell by yourself. I'm not an idiot, you're an idiot, the boy shouted back. To say that Naruto was irritated would be putting it lightly. After all, Naruto is merely a healthy young boy on the verge of adolescence, and all the things associated with it, such as hormones and the like. As such, he had a healthy temperament, like all healthy young boys. So when he is accused of doing something as stupid as trip a little kid up by said little kid, he naturally would be quite vexed. Especially when he was just about to follow the old man to receive what would be one of the most important scrolls in all of his life, and then having a little kid barge in and stop everything made his mood quickly sour. They pair glared at each other, sparks flying between them. Naruto was about to take a swing at the boy when he heard a voice, "Put him down. That is the Hokage-sama's grandson, treat him with respect." The voice originated from a tall man, wearing glasses and a dark, full-body ninja outfit, his leaf headband tied bandana style on his head. Ugh, the QB brat Ebisu thought I must get him away from the honorable grandson of the Hokage-sama. Naruto looked at boy in his hands, clearly contemplating his next actions carefully. Now he won't do it, just like all the others, thought the boy, smugness and sadness showing on his face. Naruto's next action shocked all in the room. With no hesitation, he dropped the boy to his feet and hit him hard on the head. Having gone through the pros and cons of the action in a split second, in Naruto's mind the risks were worth the gain. Risk upsetting a stuck-up jounin and possibly old man Sarutobi, the latter who would most likely forgive him. Gain self-satisfaction from making an irritating kid shut up. No contest whatsoever. The kid rubbed his head and looked at Naruto with a mix of awe and fear. Well, he had just hit him after all, he's not like the others at all. He watched as the boy took a deep calming breath, and asked his grandpa if they could continue with the business that had been interrupted. The old man nodded and motioned for Naruto to follow him, but by then he was already moving down the corridor as fast as his little legs would take him. That guy, I recognize him from somewhere. He's the one who's always pulling those awesome pranks. I'll wait till he's done with Grandpa, and then follow him to learn his secrets. Then I can beat the old man easy, he thought, laughing to himself. Meanwhile, a gaping Ebisu watched as the demon child walked away with the honorable Hokage. How dare that creature fraternize with such a great man? I will have to find a way of separating him from Hokage-sama, lest havoc ensue. But only after I pin down the honorable grandson, he thought, before noticing a very brazen fact. He was alone. Looking from side to side, he scanned the room for any signs of the tricky young master, but as usual found none. A growl built up in his chest, and with a righteous howl of anger Ebisu shouted to the heavens, "Arrrrrrrrr, how can I keep losing him like this?" "Shut up, Ebisu, we're trying to work here," came several voices from down the hall. The man deflated, and set about his seemingly never-ending task of hunting an untrained child. Elsewhere. As they entered the Hokage office, Naruto scanned the room and found his father's portrait hanging on the wall left of the Hokage building. His gaze then turned to Sarutobi, who approached the portrait of the yondaime, and pulled it aside to reveal a safe. Along with the standard code locking mechanism and a keyhole, Naruto also noted that the safe had a mahi fuin as a further deterrent against would-be thieves. Sarutobi took out a key from his sleeve, inserted it into the keyhole and turned it. He then punched in the code on the locking mechanism, and deactivated the Mahi Fuin. The safe door swung open, a small cloud of dust escaping into the air. Sarutobi removed the contents, 3 scrolls, and handed them to Naruto. One had an orange-colored seal, the second a blue seal, and the third a scarlet-colored seals. When your father decided on his plan to seal the Kyuubi, he gave me 2 scrolls. One was that orange one, which he had written for you to read when you asked for it. The second was a compilation of his plans for the village that I were to set into motion or continue when I regained my official status. That same scroll also included into it guidelines for setting up your inheritance. Sarutobi paused and pointed to something behind Naruto's head. The boy turned and gazed upon his father's official portrait. You see, Naruto, although your father's clan, your clan was small in size, they were incredibly wealthy. Whenever a member of the Namikaze clan died, all of their possessions and wealth were kept within the family to maintain the clan financially. And because so many of the Namikaze clan perished over the years, the wealth seemed to build and build through this archaic stockpiling tradition. Now that you are the last of that clan, centuries' worth of possessions, money and memories have been passed down to you. Knowing full well that this might seem to be rather overwhelming, part of Minato-san's instructions were for me to seal away the vast majority of the funds, around 80%, into a special clan account. I wrote out the details of the whole affair and took the liberty of listing every item individually so you would not have to. It's all written down on that scarlet-sealed scroll. He indicated to the scroll in question by Naruto's hand. To finalize the process, your father drew up a writ of inheritance for when you legally come of age and are considered a man in society. Summarized, it states that when you turn 16 you will inherit your clan's wealth in full, along with the deeds to your family estate and all items held therein. Anything else included under your family name will also be made available to you upon this time. You can visit the manor if you wish, but you are unable to legally live there just yet. It's a precautionary measure, I assure you, so as not to broadcast your full identity to the world. All the efforts have been made to keep your anonymity as airtight as possible. He motioned to the other scroll. The blue sealed scroll details what is available to you now. Another part of your father's instructions to me stated that I was to set up a savings account in your name, to help you with any financial matters as you grew up. And before you ask, the reason you did not know of this was because I did not want you spending all of your family's money on ramen, he said with a smile, chuckling a little at the boy's reaction. Naruto stared, his face a blank slate. Then he grinned, chuckled, and broke out into full laughter all in the space of a minute. He and Sarutobi laughed together for a couple of minutes, before Naruto wiped some tears from his eyes and sighed. Thanks for that, old man, I really needed that. But what about my mother's clan, what do I inherit from them? He asked, after calming his nerves and adopting a slightly more serious face. He waited as Sarutobi took out his pipe, a match and a small box of tobacco. The old man placed some of the leafy matter into the pipe, and struck the match on the side of the handle. He took a couple of lungfuls of the burning narcotic, and then faced the boy again. Thank you for waiting, it's just I always need to smoke whenever I talk about your mother, God rest her soul. No wonder my son is such a chain smoker. The last part was said under his smoky breath, but Naruto caught it. Your mother's family moved here some time ago, though they have all long since passed on. They were gifted on their arrival to Konohagakure with a house by your father, a modest place by the standards of some of the more noble clans of the village, but a palace for many. It is situated in the Namikaze estate, which itself is in the northeast area of the village. They did not have much in terms of wealth when they arrived, only their personal belongings. But don't worry, all of that is included under what is available to you now. Since their house at Fair Nondescript, I thought it would be a suitable place for you to live until your inheritance clears. Then why did you stick me in that crappy apartment? Naruto asked, clearly bemused and irritated. He had lived in that run-down tiny place for years not knowing a thing, when he could have been living at his own mother's house safe in the knowledge that he actually came from somewhere. Once again, for your own anonymity. Also, it is dictated in your father's will that I was not to reveal anything until you yourself came to me for answers. I was doing what he asked, nothing more, Sarutobi replied, shaking his head and taking another puff. Well, I'm moving there now. Is everything really on there like you said, because I may go to the house and pick up a few things if that's okay with you? Naruto asked in earnest, trying to put on the innocent kid look he used to use when persuading Anbu to stop chasing him. The old man smiled. Of course, I wouldn't have it any other way. Naruto bowed in respect to the venerable elder, and placed the scrolls carefully in his hip pouch. Anyway, thanks for everything, but I gotta be going. I have 3 weeks till I meet my Jounin sensei and my new teammates, so I think a little training needs to be done to rectify the whole dead last thing I got going on. See ya. Naruto waved as he turned and left the office. Later. Naruto kept walking down the street, hoping that the straggler would take the hint and leave him alone. He had decided earlier to make his way back to the apartment as quickly as possible, so that he might view the scrolls he had been given in private. But it was during this journey that he had hit a slight snag. After a while, Naruto began to notice out of the corner of his eye a small black shape flit from shadow to shadow. He paused just long enough to see a tuft of black hair push out from behind a lamppost before continuing on his way. After about half an hour and another 6 movements from seemingly empty spaces, Naruto turned and walked towards a bright patch of horizontal fence boards. With a yank, he pulled away at the inconspicuous bulge to reveal a sheepish little boy, skullcap and all. "Would you quit following me? I've got stuff to do, you know, and I don't need to be entertaining some little kid who can't take a single hit to the head," Naruto said in an exasperated tone. "My name's not Kid, it's Konohamaru. And I was following you to ask you something." He got down on his knees and clasped his hands together. "Could you teach me that Oiroke no Jutsu that you used to beat my grandpa with? I'll make you my boss and everything if you do, please," he pleaded. Naruto paused and took his time to look at the boy. Must have taken a lot for him to beg like that. He doesn't seem the type for it. He mulled it over, carefully thinking about the time it would take to teach him the technique. He did have 3 weeks to train, so an afternoon playing sensei for a kid might not hurt things. "Sure, why not? I'll teach you the jutsu," he replied, watching the kid get up and grin. Even later than before. It had taken a while, but Konohamaru had finally gotten the basics of the Oiroke no Jutsu down. Big, wide hips, firm butt, all of the most eye-catching parts of the female anatomy, from any pervert's point of view, accentuated to the furthest point that is anatomically possible. Naruto had originally created it as a means of stopping any male pursuing him after a prank. Plus it had been useful as an experiment, to see if he could actually create his own jutsu based on what he had learnt at the academy. The results had been spectacular, as it seemed to work on just about any male, and he noted a few females, with brilliant results, stopping them dead in their tracks. It was currently the middle of the afternoon, and the pair of them were sitting down and talking over a nice cold drink provided by the nearest vending machine. "So, why do you want to beat old man Sandaime so badly?" Naruto inquired. Konohamaru's face dropped, as he suddenly became very interested in a spot of dirt on his left shoelace. "My grandpa gave me my name, after the village. He said that because this village was strong, and always stood resolute, that it would bring me luck in life. But I don't ever get called it. It's always Hokage-sama's grandson this or Sandaime's legacy that. It drives me crazy. Nobody looks at me for who I am. That's why I want the Hokage name now, so they will respect me at least for that, and not just because of who I'm related to." Naruto looked up at the clouds floating in the sunny sky and sighed to himself. "Would I be like this if Dad had lived, always eclipsed by his shadow, and never seen for who I am? Poor kid." It's not that simple. To earn the right to even be considered for the title Hokage, you have to be a master shinobi capable of performing over 1,000 jutsu and beyond. You need the mental strength to take care of everyone within the village's boundaries, even the entire country itself. But the hardest thing to earn is the respect of others. I tried my hardest to get people to respect me growing up, and it's only recently that I finally got someone to see me for who I am. It took everything I had, and it nearly drove me insane." He looked at Konohamaru. "But you know what? I would go through it all over again, because having that one person acknowledge you, it's all worth it. And that's all it takes is one person. From that single being, many will come to respect you for who you are, even strangers will be able to see you, and that's something that everyone should strive for." Naruto continued, "Becoming Hokage is a long and harsh path that will take what seems an age to accomplish. But for people like us, people who are willing to walk that path without so much as flinching, the reward shall be the greatest of all. It is my dream to become the greatest Hokage this village had ever seen, and I will accomplish that no matter what. So if you want to have the Hokage title," he looked the boy straight in the eyes, "you're gonna have to beat me first." Konohamaru stared in awe at the older boy, the words he had heard striking deep. For someone only 5 years his senior, Naruto had spoken words of wisdom he had come to expect from only his grandpa. He began to look at what he had been doing, just blindly charging at his grandpa whenever he could, and he saw how stupid it really was. His attention was diverted by a voice from the trees. "I've found you at last." The pair looked up and saw Ebisu, standing on a tree branch glaring at them through his glasses. When he looked at Naruto, his eyes took on a cold look to them, like he wasn't actually looking at Naruto, rather he was looking through him. "It's that damn stare, the same stare I get from everyone else," Naruto thought. "Honorable grandson, come with me now. You must not spend any more time with that boy. If you continue, his reckless ways will rub off on you and you will become an idiot, not worthy of the Hokage name. Now you don't want that, do you?" Konohamaru got up and shouted at the adult, "Leave me alone, you weirdo. I want to stay with Naruto Nizan. At least he treats me like a real person." Then put his hands into a seal. "Eat this, you closet pervert, Oiroke no Jutsu." A poof of smoke later, and Ebisu was staring at a buxom brunette, completely devoid of any stitch of clothing. He gawked at the sight, all his willpower bent on keeping the blood inside his head from shooting out of his nose. Konohamaru poofed back to normal. What gives? It's supposed to knock him flat. Ugh, I am a gentleman. Such a vulgar technique shall never work on me. He grabbed Konohamaru by the scarf and pulled with all his strength. Now come with me, honorable grandson. I am the fastest way for you to become Hokage. You don't need such fleeting interactions with this riff-raff, it will only cloud your judgment. Unlike you, the boy doesn't even have any relatives of his own. He will never have your standing, so he clings to you as his only means of even seeing the life of a Hokage. This really pissed off Naruto. Not only had this stiff insulted him, he had insulted Konohamaru's judgment and his family. Who is he to dictate how someone lives his or her life? I can tolerate his behavior to me, but Konohamaru. Let's see him eat this, he thought, bringing his hands together into a cross-style seal. Take this Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and in a familiar poof of smoke 30 clones surrounded him. Ebisu smirked at the display, impressive, but a trick so simple as that cannot beat me. I, unlike Mizuki, am an elite jounin, one of the best. But if you want to try, boy, the go ahead, make your move. He then stared as the clones each made them same seal, a seal he had just a moment seen done by his wayward young charge. The crowd of Narutos gathered their chakra to the desired level, and with a loud boom the clearing was filled with smoke. Ebisu was about to move to teach the boy a lesson, but found his limbs heavy. As the smoke cleared, he noticed what was clinging to them. All around him, pressing against his body, were 30 noble naked girls, each purring his name. He could not help himself, and in an instant Ebisu was flying through the air like a rocket propelled by a stream of his own vital fluids shooting out of his nose. Another poof of smoke later, and Naruto and Konohamaru were rolling about, clutching their sides with laughter. Did you see the look on his face? Naruto said as he panted for breath, doing an impression of a flying Ebisu. The pair laughed for some time, just enjoying the feeling of having fun with a friend. Wiping away some tears, Naruto sighed to himself. I think I'll call that one Harimi no Jutsu, he said with a chuckle. Adopting a more serious expression, Naruto took a deep breath and gazed at Konohamaru. Remember, Konohamaru, the road to becoming Hokage is long, hard, with no shortcuts whatsoever. Then you'd better watch out, Onaizen, because now we're rivals, the boy replied, smiling proudly. Elsewhere. From his clairvoyant ball, Sarutobi smiled at the sight before him. At last he is beginning to grow up, and Konohamaru has learned some patience as well. Maybe now I will get some peace around here, he thought with a chuckle. Moving over to the window of his office, he gazed swept over Konoha before resting on the fourth stone face. Minato-san, to think you could accomplish such a thing. You never cease to amaze me, my friend. Back to Naruto. After walking Konohamaru back to his house, which just so happened to be the Hokage residence, Naruto made for his apartment like the hounds of hell itself were chasing after him. Though he had managed to keep it in check through the afternoon, his curiosity had been steadily building up during his time teaching Konohamaru the Oiroku no Jutsu. And now, the desire to sate his curiosity by looking upon his inheritance and his father's will had become maddeningly insatiable. He wanted to read them in private, so the moment his feet crossed the threshold of the apartment, he quickly did an about-face, bolted the door shut. Years of break-ins from drunken angry villagers had taught him the value of a good lock, and closed his window curtains. His hands couldn't work at the seals fast enough, shaking with excitement as they were. He decided to view the orange-sealed scroll last, as it would probably contain the most important information, save the best for last and all that. He unfurled the scroll detailing his current inheritance, and the total for his saving account. Most of the initial content focused on the steps taken to setting up of the smaller account holding the money currently available to him. It was accompanied by an in-depth synopsis on what investments had been made in his name. Apparently the old man had decided to buy him 30 of shares in a company that produced instant ramen cups. But what Naruto was most interested in at the moment was the current figure of his savings account. His breath caught in his chest as he saw the number of zeros. It was at the very least 6. He shook his head to clear it, and looked over the rest of what was available to him. First of all in his mind was his mother's house, the house where the Uzumaki had come seeking refuge after being forced from the homeland. He would go see it tomorrow, and maybe his dad's house too if he had the time. Then with trepidation he moved on to the details of his coming-of-age inheritance. Still giddy from learning of the money he had at his disposal now, he was unprepared for what he read now. What the old man said about his clan had been right, they were wealthy. He would inherit when he turned 18 an entire district in the rich area of the village, bordering on the lands under the Hyuga name. There was also a small holding in Kusakagure, the family home in Konohakagure, a shipping company based in Mizuno-kuni, and the right to stand on the village council if he wanted to. His clan's status as a founding village clan gave him that privilege, and he snorted with laughter when he thought of the reactions of the old stiffs if he was to ever exercise that right. His eyes then drifted to the money that was sealed away. He thought the amount available now was large, but this was ridiculous. He almost fainted at the total amount that was sealed away. The term more money than God came to mind. He felt giddy, almost to the point where he might have fallen backwards and not gotten up. Wiping the line of drool down his face, he quickly banished the thoughts of how much ramen he could afford from now on. He looked over to the orange-sealed scroll, his father's personal letter to him. Steadily righting himself into a steadier seating position, Naruto broke the seal and started to read. Life was good. Scratch that. Life was so good it should be criminal. It had been a week since Naruto had learned of his origins, and in that single week so much had happened. Beginning with his graduation from academy student to genin level shinobi, a sequence of events had rolled into motion as if they were a series of dominoes. He had beaten Mizuki, and in doing so unwittingly unlocked the Shinten-koi Fuin that lay dormant within his brain. This in turn had led to an impromptu trip to Shinzu-Hashi, a netherworld that existed between the boundaries of the land of the living and the realm of the dead. There he met a certain man called Namikaze Minato, who revealed himself to be his father and the creator of both the seal and realm itself. After that, he had gone to the old Hokage Sarutobi and received the scrolls detailing his inheritance left to him by his parents. During this handover, he encountered and befriended a young boy called Konohamaru, a boy who wished to become Hokage. After teaching the kid a jutsu, handing down some words of advice and trumping a pedantic pervert, Naruto left to read the scrolls of his inheritance in private. He learned from one scroll that he was now exceedingly rich, being the last of his clan and whatnot. But that was not the end of things. Flashback. Naruto swallowed, and with shaking hands tentatively broke the seal on the scroll his father had personally written for him. Slowly, he unrolled the scroll as carefully as he could, so as not to damage it in any way. Then he began to read the words written on the paper, softly and slowly to both keep any information from possible listeners. He lived in a shinobi village for Pete's sake, it could happen, and allow himself to properly absorb everything in. Son. If you are reading this, then at least one of two things had occurred. 1. The time release I built into the Shinten-koi Fuin has worn off as I had planned and you are a young man of at least 15. Or 2. That old geezer Sarutobi couldn't keep his damn trap shut and you happen to be a little younger. Most likely it is the former, but you never know. Now, I am assuming that you have discovered the connection that your mind can make to me via the Shinzu-Hashi, and that I have told you all that you need to know. I also assume that by now you are a ninja. Chunin, at least I mean you are my son and no child of mine would stay genin for long, I hope. Anyway, to the business of your training. Enclosed at the end of this scroll are instructions for the Shinzu-Hashi, so that you can learn and master its many possible functions. There may still be other applications for it, so don't be afraid to experiment within reason. Master it, and we shall be a step closer to making you into something great. And to the rest of your training, here are directions for the secret training grounds that I used when I was alive. No one but the old geezer and myself know about that place, so you can rest safe in the fact that you will not be disturbed in any way. First, go to the northeast corner of the village and find a grove of cherry blossom trees. Head north from there until you find an old abandoned cabin. By that cabin is a path that leads up and into the Hokage mountain behind the village. This will lead you to earth meets sky. Find the seal on the middle boulder by the lake, and swipe your blood across it to unlock the door to the vault. From there, I can only recommend you build yourself a good base with chakra control exercises. Also, you may want to visit a shop owned by a man named Ryu. It's hidden away in the market district, past the store that sells pickled food, then left down the alleyway. You can't miss it. Good luck, my son, and remember that I love you. Naruto put down the scroll and stared into middle distance. Dad, you really are something. To plan ahead years in advance, basing your entire idea on me like this, he thought, as he rolled up the scroll and contemplated his next move. The northeast corner of the village, it'll be more noticeable me going to this vault Dad mentioned if I stay here, and with that he began formulating a plan. End flashback. Upon learning about his inheritance, and reading the letter, Naruto immediately decided that if he were to have a new life, he would need better accommodation, preferably newer and larger than the tiny apartment he had lived in since he was 4 years old. One place immediately sprung to mind, the house that belonged to his mother. It was legally his, and more importantly it belonged to his mother's family. Plus it was secluded away from the main portion of the village, which meant that he could finally get some privacy from the occasional plucky drunk who gets it into his head that he can slay the beast and save everyone, so his wife will finally want to have kids. True story. Following the directions he had been given by the old Hokage, he managed to find the compound in little over an hour. The northeast section of the village, far from the hustle and bustle, was dubbed by some of the younger villagers as the retirement sector, as it was mostly filled with the older residents and clans of the village. With the Hokage mountain on its northern side, the place reeked of traditions and musty values of former generations. Considering the constantly changing aesthetic values of the village, the date of construction for the now empty Namikaze sector could be placed at little over 123 years ago. It appeared to be one of the largest compounds within the clan village, though he was yet to see all of houses in the immediate area. He knew which compound was the one that housed his mother's clan right away, mostly because the kanji that created Uzumaki were hammered into the wooden doors and polished steel. The main house itself was a grand sight for the blonde's eyes. Raised off the ground on a strong wooden foundation, the main house was 2 stories high with the roofs and balconies supported by finely carved and cut beams. On the ground floor every doorway was closed off by a shoji, and dusty tatami mats covered the floors. It was like a walk-in lecture on his village's heritage. There were some more modern touches to the house, such as the addition of electrical sockets and plumbing in the bathroom and kitchen. Upstairs everything was a little more modern still, with actual wooden doors replacing shoji in the entrances. Each room had its own charm and sense of individuality, even when the beds and desks within were identical. Naruto entered one room in particular, and his breath refused to leave his lungs. This reaction was drawn from a particular picture on the wooden desk within the room. This picture was covered in a layer of dust, which Naruto quickly removed with his sleeve. The object of the picture's attention was a particularly beautiful woman with long auburn hair, holding a blonde-haired baby boy wrapped in a white blanket. Written in the corner was a small message: Uzumaki Kushina and little Naruto, the 2 most beautiful people in my life, Namikaze Minato, and Naruto could feel tears welling in his eyes. Completing the compound's theme of tradition was its large garden, adjacent Shinto shrine and dojo. These buildings were built in the same style of the main house, with small alterations to suit their individual purpose. The Shinto shrine was to the rear end of the garden, marked by a cobbled path, stone lanterns and a large torii painted in pure white paint. Its singular entrance was closed off with an ornate teak doorway that was guarded by 2 Kamenu statues. Inside the shrine was paved with square tiles that were in desperate need of a clean. It seemed that at some point animals had used the holy ground as a space for their nests. The kami that the Jinguji was dedicated to was Sarada-hiko, the kami of earth and soul bearer of title Kunitsukami. In accordance with its title of Jinguji, there was an area dedicated to the calm deity Buddha. Even though it was small in comparison to the greater shrines present in Konoha, the shrine possessed all of the facilities of a shrine. The furthest room behind the stone statue of Sarada-hiko was marked with the kanji that named it as the Hayden, and through those doors was a door marked with the kanji naming it the Honden, the room containing the Goshintai. There was a chozuya for cleansing purposes, and a small kaguraden for the ritual dances. The garden was particularly opulent, or at least it would have been without the decade of neglect that seemed so common with the compound. Somebody had clearly loved the garden a long time ago. They had taken their time to craft it into a work of art. It was tiered, with the upper slopes dedicated to the shrine and a large koi pond. A subsequent stream ran from the pond and down a stone waterfall, and meandered around the garden like a watery snake. Meant for quiet contemplation, the many stone paths of the garden crossed to different points of consequence. Whenever it crossed with the man-made stream, a beautiful stone bridge swept over the water to the other side. One path led to the shrine, another to a small pagoda meant for the holding of tea ceremonies, another to the dojo. Most of the plants that had been present in the garden's heyday were only visible in the forms of empty patches of soil, though there were some trees and still clinging to life. Naruto recognized some of them to be maple trees, and fortunately for them he was a fairly competent gardener. The dojo, like the house, was built with a sense of tradition in mind. Everything was laid out in a precise manner, with equal spacing between the wooden pillars holding up the roof being one of the mathematically planned features of the building. There were 3 smaller rooms separated from the main training area by shoji. One meant for weapons and yoroi, since there were several racks and spaces for storage within. Interestingly, there were some weapons still present, though Naruto did not check the state they were in. Another room housed the kamidana, upon which stood the dojo-kuin, carved into a stone plaque, and some other small artifacts. Within the final room were several old hanging scrolls, which upon reading revealed a strange revelation to Naruto. Each individual scroll detailed a particular fable, story or historical account related in some small way to the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans. The Namikaze clan scrolls were slightly more worn than the Uzumaki's, which appeared to be recreations copied once the clan set up residence in the compound. The originals, Naruto surmised, must have been destroyed with the Uzumaki's ancestral home during the desolation of Uzumaki no Kuni. Naruto, exceedingly pleased with his new accommodation, moved in that very same day. It didn't take long to move out of the apartment, what with him owning so little to begin with. He then spent the remainder of the week buying whatever he felt was needed to furnish the house, not really caring for how much he was spending. He had enough money to buy the majority of the village if he possibly wanted to, so a new bed here and some more modern kitchen appliances wouldn't make much of dent in his finances. He spent a good 2 days making sure that the compound became presentable and clean. The dojo was outfitted with new training equipment, and cleaned in the traditionally ritualized suji, and the same respect was paid to the shrine as well. When he was done, he had a house that was both cozy and minimalist, just how he wanted it to be. It was now Thursday, 3rd of March, 1 full week after his graduation and all of the events that followed, and Naruto decided that it was time to visit the vault. First, he headed in the direction of the cherry tree grove that had been mentioned in the letter. After searching the village edge for an hour and a half, he asked a passing couple who pointed him in the right direction, only after having a small argument about whether or not they should help it. After that, it didn't take long before he stumbled upon it, pushing through a mesh of thick undergrowth that seemed to have not been passed through in a while. Naruto could see why such a spot could be considered a romantic haven within the village. It truly was beautiful. 5 large cherry blossom trees formed a ring around a pillar of rock, which had a flat area almost like a seed carved at its base. It was large enough for 2 people to sit side by side, and the rock was so smoothly carved it was difficult to tell if it were man-made or a natural occurrence. The cherry blossom trees littered the ground with their fallen blooms to create a pink carpet, and their sweet fragrance filled the air with a scent so thick it made you feel light-headed, euphoric. Upon closer inspection of the stone, Naruto noticed that all over the natural miracle were hundreds of kanji. They were names of every man and woman that had sat on the stone seat together under love's spell. These names were testimonies to the place's beauty, silent mementos of love throughout the years, a small place of serenity in an otherwise war-ridden world. It took a huge heave of willpower from Naruto to move on, and not just stand there and let time pass. Need to come back here again sometime, try and find Okage-san and Pap's names, he thought with a twinge of sadness. Then he remembered that he would pass through here every time he went up this training area his father had mentioned, so his mood perked up somewhat. He headed north, half trekking on foot, half leaping through the close-knit trees. It took him another half an hour of this before the tree line stopped abruptly, opening into a clearing at the base of the mountain. It was so sudden he had to do a double take. One moment there were trees and nothing but trees, next he was looking up at a sheer rock face. There, built not 2 feet from the mountain, was the old wooden cabin mentioned in the scroll, and just like the scroll said, to the side of it was the stairs. Now, stairs would be a loose way of describing what he saw. Leading steeply up the mountainside was a long winding path of steps roughly hewn from the rock face. Some were larger than others, while some slanted at an angle. Its one safety feature was a rusty handrail that appeared to have been hammered into the rock, though most of it seemed to be broken, and there were several spots that Naruto could see from his vantage point where the railing was missing altogether. There were even several large patches of ivy growing in wild patches up and down the cliff face, like a green carpet against the sandy rock. Naruto couldn't help but gulp at the dangerous-looking sight, but with curiosity as to what is at the top fueling his resolve, he continued up the staircase with slow, deliberate steps. It was hard, the steps' irregularity keeping his body tense, and before he was even halfway he could feel his calves burn and the breath catching in his chest due to the slightly thinner mountain air. After 1 or 2 breaks, being careful to keep close to the rock by his right, Naruto got to the top. Although he tried to stop himself, once again the breath froze in his chest as he gasped for air. If the cherry blossom grove was beautiful, then Earth Meets Sky was simply inspiring. Earth Meets Sky was actually a large basin-like valley at the top of the mountain the size of several football fields. And though it seemed strange that a place like this had gone unnoticed all these years, Naruto reasoned that it was because people just didn't travel this way. It was perfectly isolated. If he hadn't received directions, he would still be oblivious to its existence. Dad, you unbelievable son of a bitch, he thought in wonder, and with gusto he began to explore the area. Earth Meets Sky was an amalgamation of green fields, woodland, and sand with a lake at the very rear of valley. Cliff faces several hundreds of feet high surrounded Naruto, at an angle of about 30 degrees that enhanced the bowl-like feel of the place. Huge trees ringed the basin in a perfect circle that was several trees thick, and in certain spots small woods were formed as more trees bubbled forth from the border. Each tree was vast and ancient-looking, like so many of the more revered trees that popped up throughout Konohagakure no Sato. If Naruto's memories from his time in the academy served correctly, those particular trees were grown over a short period of time by the famous Mokuton Jutsu of the Shodaime Hokage. The majority of the small valley was covered in a vast grassy plain, which undulated between subtle hills and flat ground. The grass was long and wild, coming up to Naruto's chest in places. To the north was a roaring waterfall that spewed out of a large mouth-like hole in the mountainside. The water gushed out in a torrent, falling into a large blue lake ringed with small rocks and great boulders. Naruto took the time to gaze appreciatively at the lake from its stony border, wondering just how deep it was to earn its dark blue color. Towards what must have been the center of this ring of rocks were 3 that stood out from the rest, a darker shade compared to the others. A small gap to the left of these 3 provided just enough space for a portion of the lake water to spew out into a large stream, which trickled and meandered its way across the basin in an elaborate snaking pattern. As he moved through the tree border, Naruto came across 3 distinct clearings, patches where the trees did not grow. They were clearly man-made, and each appeared to be designed with its own features and unique sense of purpose. The first clearing he came across was definitely themed around taijutsu training. There were several wood and stone training posts, the types where a shinobi could hid away for days and all they would do was scratch the surface. They seemed to have been used some time ago, since the wooden posts had areas where the bark was newer and the stones sported several obvious chips and indentations. There was hard circular area where the grass barely grew, which Naruto could only guess was a sparring spot which had been treated with some sort of repellent to prevent the growth of vegetation. Finishing the taijutsu-themed clearing were a set of tree trunks marked by bull's eyes carved deep into the bark, placed there for ballistic-based training in kunai, shuriken and other throwing weapons. The next clearing was themed around meditation and the training that strengthens a shinobi's mind. In the center were 3 large and incredibly smooth tree stumps, which must have been meant to serve as seats. Behind the 3 stumps was a pond of all things, though there was no koi swimming about within it. The only thing Naruto could see was a family of toads, happily splashing around in the water. All around the clearing in a strewn circle were some surprisingly ornate braziers. They were meant for the burning of incense to aid in the spiritual training which took place within the circle, but at some point they must have been blown over by wind since none were standing erect. The third clearing was empty, save for several trenches and areas of scorched earth, and a sign that read warning. Ninjutsu training can result in death or possible severe injuries. Train safe. The sign in particular caused a bead of sweat to drop from Naruto's forehead, strangely embarrassed as he was by the rather obvious statement. The strangest area of the basin was to its western edge, which seemed to completely go against the overall Konoha/nature theme that dominated Earth meets Sky. The area in question was a semicircular pit-like area of black sand, with moved in an almost fluid motion in the breeze. Behind the small dunes was a path that led further into another area carved from the mountainside by time and nature. Naruto followed the path, wincing at his discovery on just how hot the sand was. It was incredibly warm to the point of burning, and just what would cause the temperature anomaly eluded the boy for the moment, though he found his answer up the path. The path through the rock led to a natural hot spring, large enough to accommodate several people. Stooping low at the water's edge, he put his hand in and found the temperature was perfect for bathing, not too hot and not too cold. The geothermal heat that caused the water's temperature seemed to also be heating the sand in the main valley. Though these hot springs were natural, like the others found in the bathhouses in the main hub of Konoha, there were some more modern additions to the hidden location. To the side of the large spring somebody had built a basic changing cubicle the size of a standard log cabin, 1 large main room and 2 divided rooms marked with the kanji for male and female. I wonder if Hokage built this place. Too old for him, Naruto thought to himself as he exited the cabin building. After he had finished checking out the whole area, Naruto decided it was time to find the vault, the second ambiguous name on his father's scroll. He walked to the 3 largest boulders in the circle that ringed the lake, the ones that had a slightly different color compared to the others around them. Find the seal on the middle boulder by the lake. Where's the seal? He murmured, his hands roving over the stony surface, searching for any sign of a seal of some description. He found the seal hidden behind some grass at the base of the boulder, partially buried in the earth. After a little digging using a kunai from his pouch, Naruto was able to look at the key to opening the vault in the clear sunlight. It was a small plaque with a strange orange crest at the center of a swirling design. Naruto shrugged at the sight, and following the written instructions bit his thumb to draw blood before swiping it deftly across the crest in the seal's center. There was a brief pause, then Naruto began to hear a rumbling sound. The ground beneath him began to shake, and the noise rose in pitch until it was a deafening roar. It was joined by the painful sound of stone grinding against stone, as a large slab of earth behind and to the right of Naruto caved slowly inwards like a pair of doors being pushed open. Naruto watched, his hands over his ears in a vain attempt to drown out the noise. After what seemed a long time, the stone doors finished opening with a resounding boom and Naruto was finally able to get up and investigate. The doors had opened to reveal a tunnel, burrowing deep into the ground in the direction of the lake. With caution, Naruto began to walk downwards, squinting in the darkness, the only light supplied by tiny candles placed in neat symmetrical hollows in the walls of the tunnel. After walking 20 or so paces, noticed another seal identical to the one under the boulder. Wasn't told about that in the scroll, he thought, and acting on impulse swiped the seal with his still slightly bloody thumb. The wound had healed quickly, but the blood was still there if only barely. Once more there was a deep rumbling which merged into a roaring, grating noise as the doors closed shut behind him, much faster than they opened. Crap! Naruto shouted as he tried to rush at the closing gap, but he was too late. Some dust fell through the gap, but the door was definitely shut. Resisting the urge to start panicking, Naruto took a deep breath to calm himself and his rapidly beating heart. Guess there's only one way now, serves me right for my damned curiosity. It was so obvious, but I fell right into the big red button thing. This is so embarrassing, he groaned, and began pacing onwards down the tunnel. The steps were slippery in some places, puddles of water here and there forming from a steady drip from the ceiling. Must be directly under the lake, he thought, praying that the earth between him and a lot of water would hold. He continued walking until, after the drip of the water above stopped, he reached another set of doors. These were two large doors made from metal, with two brass rings to open it and the spiral symbol of Konoha's will of fire embossed over the center. With a heave, Naruto pushed at them, only feeling resistance the first foot before they swung wide open with such sudden speed that he fell flat on his face in a comic splat. Standing up, Naruto gazed at what his father had called the vault. It was a huge man-made cave carved out from inside the mountain. 3 stories high in normal building terms, the entire area were lit with the same candles from the tunnel, casting an eerie orange glow that reflected off the dark rock walls. Naruto walked into a circular lobby area that had a small geyser-like fountain bubbling up from the floor within a circular pool. It was like walking into a history museum, or something along those lines, which Naruto noted to be a very relevant thought since this place was supposed to house the village's past. The entire lower level's floor was made of a kind of blue marble. Behind the lobby were the mind-boggling contents of the vault, what could only be described as the mother of all libraries. About 3 foot from the strangely out-of-place fountain were 3 short steps that led down to the first floor, flanked on either side by 2 flights of steps that led to the second floor. Row upon row of massive bookcases, built with a frightening architectural precision. Each bookcase was wooden and varnished with a heavy brown lacquer, 12 feet vertically and 16 feet long horizontally, with 12 shelves spaced a foot apart. Each shelf had a width of about 1.5 feet. Following the near-complete circular contour of the lobby, the long rows of bookcases started a foot from the edge. Numbering in a total of 14 consecutive rows, each of the initial series of long rows contained a total of 10 bookcases. Between each row was an aisle 2 feet wide, and at the end of each row a ladder to reach the higher shelves. The ladders were placed on smooth wheels set in grooves along the stone floor, so one could easily move from one end to another with little effort. Simply rugs of flat green rolled along the aisle's floor, to create a sense of comfort, Naruto supposed. Great stone columns 12.5 feet tall supported the floor of the second floor, spaced evenly between the bookcases after every second bookcase. Simply put, the order along the row goes bookcase, bookcase, column, bookcase, bookcase, column, etc. After the first initial row were series of desks stretching along the length of the first floor's contour from one wall to another. They were back-to-back and built in the style seen in monasteries, at a diagonal angle with a lip at the bottom to support the text placed upon it. After the row of desks, a second row of bookcases followed suite, still numbering at 10 bookcases with the evenly spaced columns. This pattern of bookcases, desks, bookcases repeated itself twice more, leading to a total of 4 rows. This numerical precision repeated itself with the second floor, except the bookcases here were slightly taller at 14 feet tall instead of the 12 feet below it. Once more there were a total of 4 rows of bookcases, interspaced with 3 long lines of back-to-back desks. Each row once again numbered in a total of 10 16-foot-long bookcases, with stone columns evenly spaced between to support the roof of the immense room. To save time, Naruto created some Hokage bunched in to roam the aisles between the rows, and when they released themselves he was suddenly hit by the sheer magnitude of the building's size. Minato hadn't been kidding when he said that he had sealed away Konoha's history as part of his fail-safe plan. Each bookcase was filled with books, scrolls, and other literary items of such worth. They were organized very rigidly to save time for the reader, which was a great bonus in as large a place as this. For example, ninjutsu took up a massive section of the western first floor. Whoever placed the information down here had taken his or her time to painstakingly split the techniques into their particular elemental groups, be it Suiton, Katon, or even the more generalized Ninpo group. These groups were then divided again into subgroups for their different ranks of power and difficulty. So, if you wanted to learn a B-rank Suiton jutsu, then all you had to do was look through the B-rank shelves in the Suiton jutsu section. This continued beyond ninjutsu into taijutsu and genjutsu, as well as the other facets of a shinobi's life such as the rules and codes of conduct. It was helpful yet maddening at the same time. Naruto made a mental note to ask his father about the system personally. But the content of this amazing library was not limited to jutsu or training techniques. It contained books and scrolls on nearly every subject imaginable, concerning the village, the land itself, and even those beyond it. Individual clan history, records of unique species found with the countries, records of particular works of art done within the village, birth certificates, you name it, and it was there. All of the other lands from Tsuchi to Mizu were covered as well, though to a slightly lesser extent. But what was there would be highly useful to Naruto. In a world where alliances and wars went hand in hand, knowing allies' traditions and an enemy's geography were powerful assets. Naruto gazed at everything. Here he had all the scrolls and knowledge he could ever want to train from, than he could possibly ever even read. And he was the only person who knew of its existence, bar maybe the Sandaime. That old coot had a weird habit of knowing everything. Unable to help himself, Naruto stopped at several points during his wanderings to just stand and laugh, expressing the sheer joy he felt radiating from his very soul. The sound reverberated throughout the entire cavern, echoing long after he had finished. One of the aisles on the eastern side of the library led to an actual door of all things, which in turn led to a huge, he was only getting used to how damned large everything was, room filled with weapons racks. It seemed that not only had his father sealed away the combined history of the entire continent in scrolls, but he had also collected any weapons that could be useful to the future generations. Think of a weapon and it was there in some form or the other. There were whole groups of archaic and ornate katana, kunai and shuriken of all shapes and sizes, naginata, spears and old shinobi armor dating back to before the Secret Wars. There were even, separated from the rest on a dais, a selection of ninja puppets. Some had human-like appearances, whilst others were something else entirely. An example was a large bird-like puppet that Naruto could only guess was for travel or reconnaissance. And just like the scrolls in the main library, everything was painstakingly ordered into offensive, defensive and specialized categories. Walking through aisles of the massive library, Naruto noticed that at the end of each fourth row was a corridor hewn from the rock leading to a small round room. Within each room were stone staircases spiraling up from the first floor to the second, as well as several newer corridors stretching outwards. Each was perfectly dug out, much like the passage leading down to the vault from Earth Meets Sky, and like that passage they were lit by ever-burning candles. Other corridors split off from these, many leading further and further into the earth like a giant anthill dug from the bedrock of the mountain, tunnels upon tunnels upon tunnels. If a model was ever built detailing the vault and its contents, then the many passages and corridors would appear like a lattice of intersecting lines. In all there were 20 levels below the library and one above the library's second floor, the candles casting their eerie light throughout. Much of these passages led to sections dubbed as sectors, and each sector were a set number of rooms outfitted for sleeping and living accommodation, with large communal kitchens, recreational large living rooms and communal bathing rooms to add comfort. These had a sort of underground bath filled with hot water rising up from the floor like a hot spring. In short, everything an entire village would need to survive in some comfort. Beyond these sectors, there were passages that led to empty rooms, some led to what looked very much like several adjoined classrooms. It was like the entire village had been recreated as an underground nest, complete with accommodation for the people, school space, and a hospital. As he and his Kage Bunshin moved through the underground maze, Naruto came to understand the true purpose of the vault. It was not been conceived with the sole intention of preserving the village's history, but with conserving the village's life itself. If Konohagakure were to ever come under attack, and defense seemed hopeless, the villagers and shinobi could retreat within this great underground fortress where they could weather out the storm and emerge to start afresh. A fail-safe plan indeed, Naruto mused as he walked through the candlelit corridors. In the case of an unavoidable invasion or emergency, the Hokage could evacuate the villagers here, far away from the village and the enemy, where they can survive for possibly months undetected. Who decided to create such a place, and how did Dad learn about it? I'll need to ask him about that. But the surprise were yet to end as the vault continued to reveal its mysteries to Naruto, who managed to stumble back to the library after finding a map of the complex. At the far end of the library opposite to the vault's entrance was one large staircase leading straight to the surface on a 45-degree angle. Naruto followed it to the top, and found that it eventually led to another metal door, except unlike the entrance this one slid into the rock instead of swinging wide open. Through the door he went, coming out to what can only be described as the greatest mountain view he had ever seen. Yes, he was still young, but this would remain at the top of the list for a while. He came out into a stone courtyard carved from the mountainside. It must have been the peak of the mountain because the air was thinner than before, but thankfully there were railings to stop him from falling over because that would be embarrassing. Know that there was anyone else there, but Naruto stood for principles, and it was the principle of falling over whatever. Just like the staircase leading up to Earth Meets Sky, there was a winding and steep path leading down the mountainside to Naruto's right. It must go down to the other side of the mountain. In case the village was ever raided, they would have an entire mountain between them and the enemy if they escaped using this route, he thought, and turned to head back into the vault. Pleased with everything he had seen, Naruto returned to the main room and began collecting some scrolls from the library that he thought would be a good starting point for his training. Later, Naruto had returned home after finishing in the vault, noticing that he had taken most of the remaining hours of the day exploring and learning about everything in the vault and Earth Meets Sky. The sun had already set in the sky when he finally entered his new home, and after a quick dinner of instant ramen with some leftover tempura, unknown to many, Naruto prided himself on having decent culinary skills. He just liked ramen a lot. Naruto decided to call it quits for the day. Placing the scrolls in a small chest he had bought for safekeeping, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. What a day was the last thought in his mind before he drifted into peaceful slumber. The next day. Today was a new day. The sun streamed in through the window and landed on the still sleeping form of one Uzumaki Naruto. Tired from the return hike from the valley-based training area Earth Meets Sky and the fortress-like underground library and village the vault, Naruto had slept like the dead. The light shone in his eyes, and he tentatively opened them and yawned. He stretched, shook his head to clear any cobwebs, and then went about his morning routine. It took a full half an hour of get up, shower, eat breakfast, brush teeth, etc. before he was fully awake. But now he was up and ready for whatever today held. From his point of view, life had thrown so many curved balls at him in the past couple of weeks. He might as well try and anticipate whatever weird coincidence or meeting might come at him today, tomorrow, or whatever. He saved getting dressed for last. Wandering to the wardrobe by his king-size bed, he pulled open the varnished doors and looked at his new clothes. They had arrived yesterday whilst he was away, which was lucky in a way since he wanted to keep his new life as secret as possible for as long as possible from the rest of the village. Most of the people were and would be hostile towards him for some time to come, and this attitude affected many facets of Naruto's life, case in point shopping. He could not go anywhere without being sworn at, threatened and taken for a ride by every shopkeeper in the whole stinking village. If the goods he was sold were not overpriced, they were usually of a deliberately shoddy nature, sometimes both depending on where he went. This happened in food shops, weaponsmiths, clothing shops, you name it. The clothing one was a particular hindrance. The orange jumpsuit that he was so infamous for wearing was not his first choice. It had been forced into his hands years ago, sizes too big, by a particularly boisterous and very large shopkeeper. The only reason he had not argued the point at the time was because he was both young, and the woman had some very sharp sewing needles within close proximity, and Naruto did not want his ass to become a pincushion. So he had taken the time to source a store that hand-made its clothing and also delivered, and placed an order for an outfit he had designed himself. It was loosely based around his current orange clothing, but with some changes that he believed would benefit his shinobi career. He ordered a suit much like his old one, except the orange coloring was all but gone completely. Instead, he chose to have a top design made with a much more durable black fabric, with hard inner padding for extra protection. Built into the chest pectoral area were 2 pouches designed to hold 3 scrolls each, like the one he had seen on the flak jackets worn by more senior shinobi. There was some orange present, in a 2 thin bands stretching along the stomach area of the outfit. He had asked in particular for a spiraling symbol to be emblazoned on the left shoulder. Beneath the jacket he wore a metal mesh vest for further protection. The lower half of his new clothing, the pants, or trousers depending on who you talk to, was now completely black. Like the top half, extra storage pouches had been included. And like the top half, these were compact pouches designed to hold scrolls or small amount of kunai and shuriken. When he first thought of them, he had initially questioned the decision as being too excessive, but then he reasoned that you can't be too careful. There was also the extra protective padding between the layers of fabric that had been included in the jumper. His original kunai/shuriken holster had been modified from the standard design. The compartments had been widened and deepened to include more projectiles, and the fabric had been sealed with an internal waterproof lining to keep the weapons dry. This particular feature held true for all of the new pouches he now had. Then there was the hip pouch, usually held in place above a shinobi's buttock, meant to carry larger items, and the more esoteric kit used by shinobi. The sizes differed slightly depending upon the person, but Naruto had opted for a single large-size hip pouch that went from one side of his hip to the other for maximum carrying space. To complete the new image, he had sent his precious Hokage to the store to have its blue cloth replaced by a longer black cloth. It had been given to him by Iruka-sensei, and to Naruto its value was beyond any sum of money, but he had decided to change the cloth to keep in with his new life. Everything was different now inside. He had matured overnight into a new person, so his outer appearance had to reflect that change. Black was a neutral color, and better suited to the life of a shinobi. To maintain the carefully set cloak of anonymity around his change in lifestyle, Naruto had purposely left a Kage bunshin wrapped within a henge to make him appear to be an old man. The clone had paid the delivery woman personally for the clothes, even going so far as to reply, "My grandson will be so pleased with his new clothes," to further the deceit. It had worked, and after hanging them up within Naruto room, the clone had dispelled itself, alerting the original at Earth meets Sky of what had occurred. Once he was dressed, Naruto paused to take out his to-do list, which he had written immediately after reading the scrolls on his inheritance. It was still another 2 weeks until he had to return to the academy for his team assignment, but he had wanted to get as much done in that time as he could. Several boxes on the list had already been ticked off, but there were still 1 or 2 things to be done. He had moved to a new location further away from the hustle and bustle, which would save him from being bothered in any way. He had not, however, sold the small, crappy apartment that he had previously lived in. Rather, he continued to rent it as a miniature base of operations away from his grand mansion in the Namikaze estate, maintaining the villagers' belief that he still lived in squalor. He had bought new clothes to reflect his change in lifestyle. He had visited and grown accustomed to the training area Earth meets Sky that his father had mentioned. He had found and descended into the vault, the immense failsafe and safe house for the village's existence. He had returned from said safe house with a cache of scrolls from the vault's library, with which he could use to begin training himself to be a better shinobi. He looked over at his scroll case. It was a small wooden chest with a combination of padlock and chakra seal for security, painted black with red metallic trim. It fulfilled a purpose, keeping any scrolls he owned or took from the vault safe and secure, so any prying eyes, he lived in a ninja village enough said, could not see what he was or would be doing. He first removed the chakra seal with a burst of chakra, obviously, and then unlocked the small padlock with a key he kept hung on a cord around his neck. Giving in to paranoia, Naruto looked from side to side before propping the chest beside him on his bed. With a deep breath he took in the chest's old smell, and reverently opened it to remove the contents within. Before him were a rather interesting collection of scrolls. Some he had owned for some time, having collected them through the years during his time at the academy to aid his. They detailed basic training like how to throw a shuriken or perform hand seals, and he had bought them out of necessity since most of his sensei at the academy had disliked him for obvious reasons. Beside these older scrolls there were some newer additions, namely the scrolls left for him by his father concerning his inheritance and legacy. Naruto was currently keeping them in the training chest because he was yet to think of a suitable way of keeping these more important documents hidden even further away from prying eyes. Then there was the scroll he had used to copy down the information from the Forbidden Scroll unto those few nights ago. He was yet to look at that one, and was still undecided as to the when he would. With this special scroll were several hidden gems he had discovered upon moving into his mother's home. Scrolls of equal importance to his father's scrolls, those left behind by the Uzumaki clan during their stay in the house. One was very old and detailed the jutsu held in great respect by the Uzumaki clan, relics of their former life in the now assimilated Uzumaki no Kuni. The second was slightly newer, and reading the signature in the initial corner of the paper had caused a small sob to issue from Naruto. The initial sentence read Naruto's jutsu by Uzumaki Kushina. It was written by his mother for him. Clearly she had penned it not very long after he had been born. She had intended to use it when training him as he grew up. It was the same with all shinobi clans, the parents teaching their children the jutsu passed down to them by their parents, continuing down the generations. It was a hallowed and venerated tradition amongst shinobi, and his mother had meant to honor it. Obviously her death had halted that dream, another reason added to Naruto's mental list titled Why I Hate the Bastard Kitsune. The remaining Uzumaki clan scrolls were also there. One contained the training steps